from Mexico is going to be your Clash Royale champion. Takes it. Sergio Ramos wins.
Huge. And nothing to stop the Hog Rider. It's going to get swing on the tombstones. That's it. Nobody is the first ever CRL World Champions. And there you have it. The fire goes up. It's a golden this time. 293. That's it. Nothing to do with it. Team Liquid is going to be your CRL champion.
Team Liquid is done and surgical go.
117 HP remaining. EQ trying to make room. Team Queso completes the reverse sweep, and they are your 2020 Clash Royale League World Champions.
Multiple world champions, multiple regional champions, more #1 finishes on ladder than you can ever imagine. That's what we have online for you today. 6 of the best in the world, without question, competing for this monthly championship. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton. Joining me as always, my friend Andrew Guy, for an absolute fire final Sunday. Andrew, we've been before show going nutty about this. Yeah. I am so pumped. This is so crazy.
It's going to be a barn burner. I'm so glad you said something about fire, because that's where my head's at right now as well, man. I mean, one of the biggest things that I took away from yesterday was who's going to beat Morten. And as we look at that bracket here in a second, you guys will get to see exactly how good he was yesterday. Morten was unstoppable. He just went 2-0 to Samuel, 2-0 to King Miniminter. But the other thing, Rich, is look at our elimination bracket, man. That thing is so freaking stacked, starting with our first match of the day.
Oh my gosh, Igor and Samuel Basoto, Hazard, aka Igor, the two, without question, the 2 best ladder players in the history of the game. #1 and #2 right there to kick things off. Then Air Surfer and Miniminter, 2 world-class players, and then after that, you get the one of the greatest of all time against the no-tilt world champion. This is nutty, and I'm so pumped.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about this is we already gave away $4,000 yesterday to Mark and Pandora. Today, the first 2 matches between Hazard, Sam, and as you just said, the second one there between Air Surfer and King Miniminter, $3,000 apiece. But first, it's all about the duel format. If you guys don't know what it is, here it is for you. Each player has to bring 4 decks. Each deck cannot repeat 1 card. That's right, 32 unique cards for that 4-deck selection. Each deck can only be played once per match, and of course, we are playing B of 3s here at CRL. That means the first player to get to 2 wins in a set of 3. So one of those decks we will not see every single weekend.
A lot on the line, of course. The prize pool, $20,000 to your monthly winner. All of these 6 players already in the $3,000 mark, but every single match win ups that money significantly. And of course, that Line versus Morten matchup, that one alone, winner is guaranteed at least 10K. And on top of that, the leaderboard points. You saw that show intro. Where do you want to be? You want to be on the big stage for World Finals. And this is the true prize, the true thing you care about as the year goes on. And those points get you one step closer to hoisting that trophy at the end of 2021.
Yeah, and those top 24 players from the leaderboard get a free pass, a golden ticket, if you will, to World Finals. Then those last 8 wildcard spots will be up for grabs. But that's a few months down the road. How about we talk right now, what we were just saying, Rich, this first matchup of the day between Igor, Hazard, Kazrdi, and Samuel Basoto. So you get to sit back. I'm actually pretty jealous that you get to just kind of sit back and watch this match, maybe pull some great moments. I personally am going to be casting this with my good friend. You guys all know who he is. Joshua Sharon, AC, Crap, SSG, Immortals. What is up? One of the GOATs of 2v2. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I am so excited for this. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, I mean, literally 2 of the best in the game. You know one of these guys very, very well in Samuel Basoto, being on a team with him. Yesterday, we saw a lot of diversity out of Samuel when you talk about win conditions. Igor was a little bit easier to kind of pin down, especially that minor mortar game in Game 3. What do you think are the keys to victory for both of these guys today?
Well, I think Samuel, you touched on it. I think he's doing a great job with mixing things up, but I think he has to also kind of balance that in with, meta decks, all that kind of stuff. We saw him use a couple of slight variations, and then both times it really didn't work out against him. And, he was going against Morten in his defense. And then Igor, He's got to mix that up with his deck selection. I don't want to see him run minor Earthquake, minor Valk all the time. So it's going to be interesting to see what he pulls out.
Yeah, we'll see right now here. We already see Miner and Valk together, as you were just talking about. One of the things you might not want to see, Josh, but hopefully, you know, based off of what his coach or former coach was saying yesterday with Eric, we are not seeing a Mortar here. So it's looking a lot more like Miner control, which is something that's kind of popped up a bit more these days. Josh, what's your opinion in general about control decks in CRL?
Okay, in CRL, I love them. I hate going against them, but when it comes to competing, trying to use the best decks in the world, especially when you're doing what Samuel is doing, which is running the deck that Igor lost to against Line the other day. You know, you get that, you know, that little outplay ability when you're using a deck that someone's tilted against, maybe. And yeah, I think cycle decks are phenomenal for this format.
It's a really good point that you make. Why not play a deck that you know is already kind of tilted to someone? They lost to it yesterday, don't want to see it again. So Samuel throws it in his face early on here. Wall breakers to the right, nice Spear Goblins and Knight on the left-hand side here to defend. Pretty easy, pretty clean across the board for both of these guys, but we do see that Samuel has about 100 HP lead on that left-hand side with his minor chip damage.
Yeah, both players just, you know, playing cautious. They don't want to overextend. And right now, so far, working out for Samuel Basoto. But at the end of the day, there's only 200 HP separating the two. This is an okay spot for Igor. He just wants to make sure that, you know, he stays within reach. And then once it gets, because he does have Tesla, which is going to be able to block a lot at the bridge, not allow him to use the NATO offensively. So he is going to be able to do that. He kind of wants to just stay within reach until this game gets finished up.
Yeah, you know, Hazard here is going to be able to defend really easily. You were just saying there with that Tesla. Does Samuel have, is it going to just be minor chip damage to win for him?
He's just in such an awkward spot because the difference between Mortar and Tesla, Mortar is always like defensively, and then like it doesn't take out the Magic Archer whatsoever. Right. But when you have the Tesla, which you can hit at the bridge and then you can still get value on wall breakers, all of that, like there's so much value it can get, and so it just, I think we're gonna see, if we ever see Igor cycle a Tesla incorrectly, I think that's Basoto's time to shine. Until then, he's just gonna play super, super slow. That's
a really brilliant point you make there about that Mortar that Igor is playing, or that, you know, he would usually play, and you talk about being able to defend Magic Archers with that Mortar. It is a really frustrating thing, and this is exactly what you're talking about, Josh. You get that Tesla up high. There's no chance for a Magic Archer to get on tower to get that you know, that piercing damage through based off the defense that Hazard played. So I really love the deck selection here from Igor, especially because yesterday we talked a lot about him not doubling down on his favorite two win conditions, which is Mortar and Miner. Getting them split up, I think, makes it a little harder for his opponents to gauge what he's going to do. A great delivery there to not line up the Magic Archer.
Yeah, brilliant defense. He knew what was coming. You know, it happened to him 1,000 times the other day. And yeah, he was super prepared for it. Loved that defense. He just has to make sure that he continues to do so. But yeah, forces out the Spear Goblins as well. Yeah. Igor in a phenomenal spot, up 5 elixir, and yeah, in total control.
Yeah, and that's a good point you make there about those Spear Goblins being forced out, right? That's a really good indicator for Igor to know, okay, Samuel's down elixir now. That was a desperation. Spear Goblins that had to come down to make sure that last Hunter shot didn't come in on the tower. And also, we finally saw the Miner plus Poison come out. And here it is again. Bomb Tower, Knight, and Princess Tower all in that Poison.
Yeah, and I love what he did right before we hit that triple elixir. He goes with the Tesla at the bridge against the wall breakers, but then he also logs them off. He wants to keep that Tesla alive, and that Tesla staying alive can be the difference maker. And again, we see the Tesla at the bridge protecting everything, but this is the first chance we see at a potential NATO back, but yeah, he's just too fast, he's too quick with it.
Yeah, really it was about being too fast. I was worried it was going to come down there as well, and NATO, that Hunter was perfectly lined up to give some tower splash damage. Doesn't come out though, as you said. Igor just kind of living in the future. Now we get the Magic Archer on top of that Tesla. This is where we can see a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, 781, not much. All right, perfect. Going in with the offensive Miner, he had to apply a little bit of pressure. NATO isn't in cycle.
Oh, that's gonna be the Magic Archer. Wow, that was about as close as it could get, man.
Wow, no NATO in cycle, but he still lines it up perfectly. Gets it, oh my goodness, gets it to be a 102 HP difference. That, I don't know how he was able to bring it so close, but yeah, brilliant stuff from both players. I love the attempt from Masoto, but it was just that solid defense overall throughout the entire game. And it just made it so that it didn't matter what he did at the end, he was in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the play-by-play of what we just saw. You know, if one of those Magic Archers connects earlier, it's a different game. Samuel lined that up perfectly at the end. He was incredibly patient all throughout that entire 5 essential minutes there to get that damage in on tower. He never forced it with the Magic Archer, knowing that Tesla was always there in response, and he finally sneaks it in those final minutes. But this is a little bit earlier on in that game.
Yeah, I love the last replay right there, because once it hit that overtime period, it was like a minute 58, something like that. That's when you saw Igor go in with a miner in the back. That's when he understood, hey, I need to be switching up placements. I need to get that damage. I can get Poison Cycle because I'm forcing out, you know, a Knight or Spear Goblins plus a NATO, and that's 5, 6, 7 Elixir sometimes. And so that's when he understood, hey, I can go all in, and that's why he got so much damage.
And the key to victory there, like you called early in the game, was basically the Tesla, right? Keeping that Tesla alive, making sure it was always in cycle, making sure it was getting Magic Archer damage, never allowing those lineups to happen, being available for the wall breakers. It was only at the very end when we finally saw that Magic Archer lining up, taking the Tesla off the board, where we actually saw the first misplay from Igor, which was he dropped that Royal Delivery up high after the Magic Archer was dead. And then that allowed Samuel to create that huge bridge push. So, I mean, I think you said it perfectly, Josh. He made maybe one mistake, and it was so far into the game that it was too late.
Yeah, and that was great for him. Here we go. We might see Samuel run RG. He's known for a lot of RG, and that's basically... Oh, okay. I was going to say that's one of the only decks we see Fisherman in, and so it was like an easy call for me. But
it's the curse of the caster, man. It's the
guess
curse
I
of the
misspoke.
So Night Witch Fisherman coming into a Prince, Archers, and Electro Spirit. Bats behind here to help assist with taking this Mega Knight off the board. And there's the graveyard early on. Is that too aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be able to have Archers back in cycle. The Bats will be able to clean up everything, and so it's not going to be that big of a problem. But if Igor... Was he running this RG deck the other day?
I think
he...
I was going to say the win conditions that we saw from Igor were RG, Hog, Royal Hog, Graveyard, and that was it. Other than, like, you know, Mortar Miner being mixed in there as well.
Wow, and getting so much damage right there. RG and the Barb on top of the tower. Yeah, when I saw the Prince, I was like, okay, who are we watching? And then when I knew it was Igor, it just reminded me about how he got that Prince at the last second on that one match.
The charge we were talking about. So this Royal Giant deck, now, do you think that damage that just came in, was that because of a brilliant play by Igor, or was it because of that overcommit that we saw earlier from Samuel?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the deck composition, because Samuel, in most instances, that would be a pretty solid play. You know, he doesn't have all that much Elixir. He can't do, you know, anything on the counter push in theory, but then he also has Archers, and so he's able to cycle back to that, and then a 12 Elixir push going down the field gets stopped entirely by Archers and Fishermen, and it becomes something that's hard for him. But this is a lot of damage coming down.
Oh, and that Fireball, that's a Fireball only on top of a Brawler. This is going to be towered down. That was a defense that went awry very, very quickly. We're going to have to take a closer look at that maybe after this game, but that fell apart insanely fast for Igor.
Yeah, no kidding. He just couldn't do anything to it. And then we're going to see a lot of Gob Cages, a lot of high DPS on top of the RG. No shots whatsoever. We are going to see, I don't know if we're going to see him cycle MK or Fisherman, but either way, he's in a great spot to be able to finish this out.
Yeah, I mean, that was still a really, really nice cycle there. Igor was able to get some offense back on the board, keep the Archers alive, but it's just too little, too late. Maybe a little aggressive with that second RG that came down. It was into a Goblin Hut, into a Mega Knight, and a Night Witch, which turned into a massive, massive counter push.
Yeah, we saw this with Air Surfer the other day when he got too aggressive with these RG decks. And I don't know what it is about these RG. I think people just don't realize that it is 6 Elixir. They can stack, you know, a ton of troops behind it. And then, yeah, we saw the game go away from him. And he was in a great spot before that.
Yeah, you know, Royal Giant, Ram Rider, Graveyard, they're these cards that provide basically zero utility defensively, right? Like the Ram Rider does have the slow, but you know, you talk about the Graveyard and the Royal Giant. If you get too aggressive with them early on and you give away all that elixir, you see what you're kind of left with, and that's basically nothing, right? Very little elixir. He has the archers on the board to meet the Brawler, but the Brawler takes one of them off. Then he's got 4 elixir for the Fireball, but he can't Fireball the Mega Knight plus the Hunter and then just let the Brawler go to town on his tower. So it's basically picking your poison in that situation based off of maybe a little bit too aggressive Royal Giant at the bridge.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to see that from him, and that's why we see so many, you know, Knight, Archers, Mega Minion, Cannon Cart kind of graveyard decks, and it's because, like, it's so easy for them to get way too aggressive, but those cards are going to be able to balance it out. But if you don't have those options, then you get too aggressive. Instead of a Knight, you have a Prince. It makes it so that you can't defend properly, and then we see right there, that's why he was able to get that entire tower.
Right, because if he has a Knight instead of a Prince there, he's able to get the Knight down and the Archers and the Fireball, right? He's able to get all of those down to be able to tank for the Mega Knight, deal with the Brawler. Archer can help with the Skeletons, so that deck being a little bit heavy really hurts when you're playing a little too aggressive.
Yeah. Snowball coming out. And then Snowball coming out, I love seeing it. The one interaction that I hate seeing, but I love seeing at the same time, is when Ice Wizards don't cross the bridge. It takes like 14 seconds for them to
just duke it out on the river.
Yeah.
So I was going to say maybe we'll see some form of Hog Rider or Ram Rider from Igor, but now we're seeing the Hog come out from Samuel. Probably going to be, you know, Hog triple spell.
Yeah, and if it looks like Igor is going to run the Knight Cannon Cart Graveyard deck.
Yep.
Going against Hog Triple Spell, which does have Snowball. Oh, and it's going to be Valk instead of the Knight. This is not what he's looking for.
Yeah, this is a really tough one, right? We got a pretty heavy deck at the bottom of your screen when you talk about being able to get a good push and assist your Graveyard. And then on the other side of it, you've got an opponent that has an incredibly fast cycle and a lot of great ways to deal with your defenses and clean up your Graveyard.
Yeah, that was his second Hog, and he had already out-cycled the Bomb Tower right there. This is going to be so extremely difficult, but the thing is, he does have Snowball. So even if he is able to out-cycle it, if you defend with a Mega Minion plus Snowball, the Knight plus Snowball, Knight Musketeer, he does have options, even if he doesn't have Bomb Tower and cycle.
In all of those situations that you're talking about, doesn't the Hog still get a hit, or does it not?
If you defend properly and quickly enough, but also I have no idea what he was doing with the Graveyard at just on top of the tower with the Knight not tanking. I'm very surprised. I wonder if his finger lifted a little too early, but yeah, I was shocked to see that. But yeah, if you are quick enough, you should be able to stop it from getting any shots whatsoever.
And actually, we saw the perfect example of that at the bottom of the screen to kind of reinforce what you're just saying there. It was a perfect defense from Igor, but it did follow a very odd Graveyard, as you just said.
Yeah, he does have arrows, which does give him a chance in this kind of matchup. And right there, we do see the Knight lock onto the tower, get it down to 1631. And, you know, we do see a slight advantage for Igor, but with no big spell, it is going to be kind of difficult to finish this off. I would like to see maybe Archers placed a little bit higher and then use them to win bridge battles instead of trying to take out the Graveyards. I think he has to mix that up, because right now Igor's on a cycle where he always gets the Archers on top of the Graveyard. Or yeah, the arrows on top of the Archers on top of the Graveyard.
Right, so there's the Archers that you're talking about. Arrows come out early. Now maybe we see the Skeletons come in a second later. No, he goes defensive Earthquake. So now the Earthquake is out of cycle, which makes these bomb towers that much more threatening. Is Samuel just in trouble right now, or is there a way to get around this beautiful prediction Snowball on those Skellies?
Yeah, beautiful prediction, Snowball on the Skellies. He is in a lot of trouble right now. He's not blocking things, and there you go. We do see the block at the bridge. Yeah, he just needs to start mixing up defenses, and then instead of allowing him to get those good pushes, and right here, there we go. We do see the Hog at the bridge. He just needs to, you know, make him allocate more elixir into other places, because right now he's able to build those perfect pushes every single time.
Yeah, and it's really tough to figure out your opening, right? Because you don't want to overcommit and then not have enough to defend. But as you're saying, we need to create just enough pressure to make it so that it's not as easy for Igor to pull the trigger on those Graveyards. I don't know what just happened there.
Yeah, and getting it down to 862, he's always getting about 2 to 3 skeleton shots, plus the snowball, plus the arrows damage. He's always getting 300 every single time. And so that's why we need to see those hogs at the bridge. But because of the fact that we're not seeing enough elixir spent from Samuel on offense, he's just able to cycle back to another bomb tower, and he's able to cycle his defenses easily.
And he's spending so much. You know, skeletons, the Tesla came out, we saw the archers and the royal delivery, and it's making it really hard to create that presence on offense. And now you can see, you just see Samuel starting to stack the Teslas, but still not being able to get a lot out of his offensive pushes with these Hog Riders.
Yeah, I mean, just great defense from Igor. I mean, he's just doing everything he wants to in this matchup. The prediction snowball, the archers or the arrows on top of the archers every single time. This is just beautiful.
Yeah, and I like the way that he went with his deck selection today. That, you know, that RG deck, everything that we saw out of Igor today was pretty much par for the course, other than his first deck, which I think was really a huge game win for him. Made him a little more comfortable in game 2, so he was able to play something that we'd already seen. Yeah, he gets beaten by it, but now we see game 3 going back to his tried and true, very comfort deck here. Bomb tower in instead of the mortar, and he decides to rock this basically graveyard control deck to take that set. And I mean, that makes it so now he's going to make over 3 grand. Samuel walks away with 3 grand, and it is eliminated.
Yeah, it's tough to see him go, one of the best players of all time when it comes to ladder, and, you know, making his name for competitive, as we see here. Igor just doing whatever he wanted. I loved what I saw out of him. He used the arrows perfectly. He used the, I mean, he even mixed in, and yes, I don't love the fact that he was going in with naked graveyards, but the reason why he's doing that is because he knows he can get that solid 200, 300 damage. He knows he can get archers out of cycle, and then he can really prepare for the second graveyard. And that's when he was doing the most damage.
Yeah, and then you guys just saw there what Josh was speaking on earlier, a perfect defense on top of that hog. Even with the snowball coming in from Samuel to slow down the Mega Minion, you get that late snowball in, pushes the hog away. Great defense, and that was really the name of the game there for Igor. He was just so clean defensively for that entire game, able to create just enough pressure. As you said, even when those graveyards were not getting damaged, they were making Samuel reallocate elixir, which was one of the points that you were making that I think was really important when you're playing against that Hog Rider deck, right? If you are making it so that your opponent has to overspend on defense, they can't support their Hog Riders the way that they would like to.
Yeah, and when you can't do that, I mean, you don't need that much elixir to get a good hog push going. You only need hog, you only need earthquake, really. And if you're cycling well enough, then you can just Valk on top and archers. But with the, he was also forced to use snowball because of how much HP he was down immediately. And that's the reason why Igor was in such a good spot. He wasn't able to get that one good push to get himself a ton of damage.
So here we go, first decks of the day from both of these guys. One very popular deck, and then the deck from Igor here is one that I've started to see more and more lately. Tons of control. We saw that he wasn't getting those minor poisons down until very late in the game, and those high Teslas were a big obstacle or mountain to climb for Samuel Basoto, just not able to get enough damage on tower until the very end, but it was too little, too late. And Josh, I'll let you take it here with a very aggressive, you know, start from both of these guys.
Yeah, and I loved that Igor recognized elixir, and, you know, he thought that he could go in. But again, in these kind of decks with RG, you have to be very careful about doing that. His Prince gets so much value in this matchup, going against the opposing Mega Knight, going up against the opposing Night Witch when you pair it with like a Bar Barrel and an E-Spirit. There's so many things they can do on defense that there's no need to apply pressure. You can just have them play into you, and then when you have that counter push, that's when you go in with that RG.
And that's maybe what the note he took from game 2 and just wrote it on to game 3. He stayed just aggressive enough throughout the entire game to make it so that Samuel was always playing out of his comfort zone. He always was overspending on defense. He was never able to defend those graveyards the way that he liked. Beautiful job with the arrows there by Igor. He held on to him as his 8th card shown, and the first time we saw him, it took out archers, Princess Tower damage, and of course the skeletons. So Hazard, Kazardy, Igor, he is moving on to that next rung in the elimination bracket. But next up here, we have Air Surfer against King Mini Minter. Mini Minter, obviously our #1 seed 2 months in a row, and Air Surfer, a guy that you've been very very, very familiar with. Josh, yesterday we saw Air Surfer kind of go back and forth, and that's been one of the things that people say he's struggled with in his professional career is consistency under pressure. What do we think we're going to see out of him today now that not everything is really on the line? He's out of that top winners bracket, but he still obviously has a chance at the gold.
Yeah, you know, I got the feeling from him, and, you know, he did lose with it, but when you have the confidence to play a spell cycle deck against a top 8 competitor in the entire world, it shows that you have that confidence that you're looking for in order to be able to win these kind of events. And so I think he's in a great spot. He just needs to play his game. And if he is able to do so, he's going to be in a good spot to be able to take on Mini Minter. Mini Minter, you know, we saw him last month. We saw him the month before. We've seen him this entire year. He's on fire. He's playing exactly how he should in every single matchup. And you just don't see that out of that many players.
Yeah.
And so both players just doing what they can.
I love that about Mini is he's like, he plays like a very like hungry rookie, but he's still incredibly calculated. I love how aggressive he gets in certain moments, and he's still able to recover. On the other side of it with Air Surfer, a guy that we've watched for years and years and years, truly one of the best in the game when he plays his game, as you just said. So he did a lot more of that later on. We're seeing it right now early. Mortar, I mean, Air Surfer is one of the best in the game with Mortar. I'm happy with what I'm seeing to start.
Yeah, no kidding. I love that he's using Mortar game number 1. Trying to get that, Mortar versus Loon matchup. We know Mini Minter loves Loon. Yeah, I think that's a great deck selection from Air Surfer. And right here, going against the Baby Dragon, you know that Mini Minter could be running RG. And if he is, Air Surfer is having the exact matchup he's looking for.
Of the decks that Mini Minter played yesterday, his win conditions were Hog Rider, Electro Giant, Balloon, Log Bait mixed with Royal Giant, and of course Royal Hog. So a lot of things there that can be kept under control by a Mortar.
Yeah, and here we go, Giant Skeleton coming down, and then we do see the Loon coming out of him. And so this is exactly what Air Surfer could have been looking for, because he has the cannon cart, he has, excuse me, he has the Snowball, he has the Musketeer. This is what he's set up for. And as long as he plays good defense and doesn't allow Mini Minter to overwhelm and stack too much, he should be in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're up here, man. You literally said it. You're like, Mini loves running Balloon. That's exactly what it looks like Air Surfer was preparing for. He's got a great graveyard deck here with a ton of control for things in the skies. And of course, he's got 2 buildings, right? That cannon cart coming off of its wheels can meet a Giant Skeleton regularly. The bomb goes off, and you've got a healthy cannon cart off of its wheels to hold for that Balloon. So being able to double down on his defense with one of his offensive cards is going to be really nice for Air Surfer.
Yeah. And Air Surfer, for the time being, is going to go just straight up into him in triple elixir and double elixir. That's when we can see him possibly go opposite lane. He doesn't want to allow him to stack too much. And if we do see that out of Mini, that's when he can get those Giant Skeletons down the field and then maybe NATO everything into it. He's got to be extremely careful about that as the game does go on.
Fireball there, getting a little bit more damage from Mini Minter, coupled with that Bar Barrel, will take the Musketeer off of the board. This Mortar, though, will get a few shots in. That cannon cart just high enough, and the Bar Barrel getting picked up by Air Surfer's ground units. So those shots coming in for that Mortar, huge here.
Yeah, I love the patience right there. Yes, that's a Baby Dragon on his tower. That's not supposed to be happening in most, in most games. But he recognizes, hey, look, I'm just going to put my Knight low, and then I'm going to cycle back so I can have another offensive Mortar. I'll take a little bit of damage. I'll let it kill my Spear Goblins. I don't want to place my Knight too high, because as soon as I do that, that's when I'm spending too much Elixir, and that's when he can stack, and it becomes a problem.
So Spear Goblins meet the Balloon, which is met by a NATO, so a Snowball comes down with this Mortar. A nice job there by Mini Minter to make Air Surfer overcycle, if you will. Now he's got his Mortar out of play on the right-hand side of the board. However, as deep in the game as we are, it's pretty easy for Air Surfer to get back around.
Yeah, we see him cycle those arrows. I love that. He can just go in with a Snowball and then another arrows, and then Ice Wizard is killed, and Baby Dragon is almost dead. This is just stellar defense so far, and we see the perfect Mortar Kite.
Yep.
Just got to be a little bit careful of that bomb, but it's not even going to be able to kill off the Musketeer.
Excellent spacing there, like you said, just completely spaced stuff out so that it was not going to get any collateral damage from something else dying on the board. Giant Skeleton Bomb doesn't clean up the mortar after it goes off because of the spacing, and of course the Musketeer survives with a sliver of health. Beautiful defense there from Air Surfer, who is now back on offense, mortar on the ground, trouble for Mini.
Yeah, I love this. He recognizes, hey, look, I have such a huge lead. Let me just full defend. No, in these kind of matchups, you have to keep the aggressive on, because as soon as you go full defense, they are allowed to keep their NATO in cycle. They're allowed to stack. Right there, you see him waste the NATO right there. Makes this defense so much easier when the Musketeer is going to be able to stay alive. And then after a simple snowball, we should see a stellar defense.
I'm glad you were so calm, because I was freaking out for a second. So we see this, another great defense, mortar up high, the mortar does connect. That just again shows how much better you are at the game than me. It's like you were so in control of the cycle, you knew exactly what was coming. Jack had it on lockdown. Air Surfer takes that game, no problem. Great deck selection, great patience, amazing decision making by Air Surfer, and he did exactly what you said he needed to do, which was play his own. Stop laughing at me. Are you laughing at me right now?
I was hoping with the cameras not on me that you wouldn't be able to hear it.
So there we see early mortar lock, and I'll let you kind of talk us through this, Josh, because it was pretty perfect.
Yeah, you know, he just defended every time when the loons were coming down the field. I love that he was cycling arrows on top of the troops, because as soon as you cycle the arrows twice, plus the snowball, you're able to kill off those ice whizzes. You're able to get those baby dragons low. And here, there was that great play where he just cycled the knight. He didn't want to cycle it up. It was going to walk into the Tesla right there. And yeah, I mean, it was just perfect defense every time, spacing out troops. And then I loved how he kept on the aggressive. He forced out defensive NATOs instead of offensive NATOs. And as soon as you do that, it's too easy for him to just put the Musketeer low. He only has a fireball and the bar barrel. And so the Musketeer is going to be able to survive for 70 seconds on the map. And, you know, it was too easy for him.
Yeah, so Air Surfer playing a pretty clean one right there at the very end. Things got a little bit haywire with that triple elixir flowing, but he did exactly what you said he needed to do. One of the things that I kept hearing you kind of celebrate throughout that game was the use of the arrows, when he would cycle the arrows. And that's something that I recognized as being a lesser player than you guys. When I have arrows in my deck, I'm always looking for a kill, right? I'm always looking for a killing blow, whether it's a firecracker, archers, skellies, what have you.
Yeah.
The amount of times that we saw Air Surfers just cycle those arrows to get damage on the tower and lower the HP of all the DPS troops, it's just something to recognize. He never forced out one of the cards that he truly needed for a cycle, like the Knight or something in the back, until he knew he was safe. Those arrows being cycled regularly was a really, really nice play that I kept hearing you highlight.
Yeah, it's so difficult if you haven't played, you know, that specific matchup or that deck 1,000 times in a row, because you just don't know how to spend those cards, especially without putting yourself in those kind of negative cycles and difficult situations. And that's why it was just so impressive to me that he was able to do that. And here we go. We see the Graveyard Cannon card going against Hog cycle. Last time we saw the Graveyard win. This time we could see the Hog win.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty fun matchup for us to watch. We see really, really nice defense there from Air Surfer on one side of the board. He gets a little bit of damage on the right-hand side, but Mini doesn't walk away with nothing. 2106 to 1934. It's nice to see Air Surfer using these quick cycle decks, something that he's very familiar with, and obviously, you know, the cards that he is repeating from Expo, traditional 2.9, you know, it's going to make these defenses even more familiar for him.
Yeah, two things to recognize right here. We do see the Earthquake already get cycled when it's at 137 in the game, and we do see the Inferno Tower, so that will change the matchup quite a bit. And then the other thing is we do see the Valk instead of the Knight, which does mean Mini Minter cycle is going to be quite a bit slower, and so he has to be very careful about that.
You see the Royal Delivery coming in to help clean off those skellies from the board, but just maybe one tile too low or turns around, allows that Mega Minion to get a swipe in. So Mini now 2049 on Air Surfer's right-hand tower, 2106 on his left. Mini Minter still technically down.
Yeah, slight mistake right there. But the thing is, you know, he still is in a good spot, and we see this aggressive Earthquake Hog. And yeah, already towered down to 1250. Inferno Tower is going to change everything, because if he splits up the troops, and right here we do see it, the Brawler does come down the field, but it's 8 seconds, you know, faster than the Valk and the Mega Minion. And so it just makes, it just gives it a ton of value every single time it gets played.
Yeah, that Inferno Tower just eating everything up off the board, not even having to really worry about defense on the front end, where normally that Valkyrie would be a big-time threat, or the Brawler, or the Cannon card, as you were just mentioning. Now that Valkyrie, all those cards, just that much less of a threat because of this Inferno.
Yeah, here we go. He's up to 4 Elixir, and then is going to be able to go in with the arrows on top. He has to be extremely careful about this, getting the tower all the way down to 724. He just wasn't in the right cycle to go in with the Hog on offense, and because of that, he's able to get arrows value. He's able to clean up everything nicely, and so 724, 740, this is as close as it gets.
Yeah, and it seems like Air Surfer's going to have a lot of trouble defending this. He's going to maybe go Archers low, the Hog Rider up high to create some offense, so now we can't see Mini double down on his own offense. Hog Rider gets 2 hits, but that Cannon card is up front.
Yeah, he just has to defend this, and then if he does, it's over. All he has to do is cycle the log, cycle the Earthquake. We do see the Royal Delivery come down on top, is able to stop it if he can get this down in time, and we see
Log's
the log.
not going to hit the tower, though. Log doesn't hit the tower.
Okay, has to be very careful. We could see a defensive Earthquake come out. He does want to be extremely careful about everything. Perfect, right there. The reason why he needs to cycle the Earthquake is if Mini Minter's last card is Snowball and or Freeze, that could have done him dirty if he tried to defend with troops. And so I love what he did right there. We do see the Valk at the bridge to stop everything.
Wow.
And then a simple Earthquake.
Thank goodness you're here. I was able to just sit back and listen. That was absolutely crazy. And I think that my favorite thing that you called out there, man, was the way that he defended with the Earthquake because of what could happen if there was another card, right? That's how you have to think if you want to be the best in the game. And that is exactly what Air Surfer did. Brilliant calls there, AC.
Thank you. Yeah, I've played against this deck 5,000 times. My teammates were considered some of the best graveyard players, you know, best Hog players in the world. You know, it makes my job super easy when I've lost to this 4,000 times and they whisper in my ear, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And so now I'm able to teach the world.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm learning, man. That defense, that was it right there. The Earthquake cycled, able to get back around. The first log from Air Surfer being dropped really low, so it knocks the units back, makes sure they don't get any damage on tower, and he decides to sacrifice the tower damage 2 times. You can go for the gold, right? Like you said, all he needs is an Earthquake and a log. But if he did either of those things on the cycle before, he would have lost the game. The low log to knock units back, the Earthquake, as you said, on defense to clean up the graveyard, and then it's all wins from there on. Great stuff from Air Surfer here, and that was a beautiful set.
Yeah, I was so impressed. He was just in the right situation every single time when it came to deck selection, but he had to make sure that he was placing everything correctly, you know, spacing out troops and going in on offense when he needed to, and just everything was perfect from him in that set.
Yeah, you look at deck selection here, going back to comfort in game number 1, but also, Josh, like you pointed out, maybe looking for that balloon. He's got a ton of responses here. The mortar, the snowball, the cannon cart when it goes off its wheels, and of the obvious responses in the musketeer and the spear goblin was going to be really, really tough for Mini to break on through, especially when you talk about that giant skeleton bomb going off and not cleaning up a cannon cart. Maybe even making that cannon cart more available for defense for Air Surfer. So that's game number 1. Hopping into game number 2 and looking at the deck, excuse me, the decks that we just saw. Let's kind of talk the audience through this. We got basically a Hog Earthquake deck going up against what we saw from King Mini Minter here in Graveyard Cannon Card, something we're very familiar with.
Yeah, it was a slight variation to the usual Cannon Cart Graveyard. Instead of Knight, he does have Valk, which makes his cycle extremely slow. You also do have to notice that it was poison and arrows. He can't get very aggressive on offense and then fireball on defense. He has to make sure that he's getting calculated offensive attacks every single time. And on the left, we do see Hog cycle. He has the Royal Delivery for the Valk Cannon Cart pushes, and he does have the Hog. Whenever he tries to make that push, that's when he goes in with the Hog.
So let's take a look here at our bracket. Walking away with $3,000 apiece, Samuel Basoto and King Mini Minter. We'll get back to the elimination side of it here in just a second. We're going to the top. Line has lost 2 games on his journey to the semifinals here at the top of our bracket. And of course, Morton, untouched through 2 sets.
Yeah, both players playing extremely well. Morten, it feels like everything is coming together for him. It's been so long since we felt that way about, you know, him when he's on a squad or by himself or anything. It just feels like this is his time. And then Line, obviously, phenomenal player. You know, there's not much else to say.
Yeah, two incredibly calculated guys, calm and pros that have been here many, many times before. Guys, that's going to do it for me and Josh right now. We're about to bring on our boys Eric and Rich Slayton, of course, to talk us through this next barn burner of a match. We'll be back in just a bit.
You know, you talk about barn burners of a match. Eric, we can't get much better than this. I mean, look, we just saw Mini Minter versus Air Surfer. We saw Samuel Basoto up against Igor. But now we go to Line, the no-tilt world champion, and Morten, one of the greats of all time, CRL Western champion. I mean, what a great championship Sunday this is.
Yeah, and I'm so happy they left this match for us because it's going to be so good. Morten versus Line, not only are they two of the best players, but they're also two of the best performing players in this bracket, right? The gameplay we've seen from both of them has been so high level that I can't decide who will win this. I can't predict it. There's no shot. And the matches before this as well have been so good.
Well, luckily, we don't have to do much of a prediction because we get to watch them actually play Clash Royale. So we'll jump into the match here in just a moment. Eric, we've seen a wild day so far, and looks like it's going to get only crazier from this point forward.
Yeah, and so far today, I've seen that a lot of the analysis work has been the difference, right? Because when you're playing at such a high level, they're all so similar in skill level that analysis has made the difference today, as we just saw with Air Surfer. So I'm curious to see what you bring out against Morten, because there's no way you don't expect a wall breakers deck like he's running right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's something he goes to almost more than you would expect from Morten, but of course, longtime log bait player, and that was the thing you always saw. So he does find his rhythms. Of course, there was the Pigs period where it was him and Sam, whenever they played solo, playing a whole lot of Royal Hog. So I guess he has his moments, but we'll see if Line's prepared well here. And, you know, you talk about the differences in these two. Of course, Morten's profile internationally is about as big as anyone's. But the one thing that Morten doesn't really have on his resume, and it's kind of a shock when you think about it, there's no solo number ones. Barring the CRL Combine qualifier back in 2018, there's no major number one finish victory. Across from him, though, in Line, what you do have is a world championship, the no-tilt world championship here in Clash Royale.
Yeah, Line has actually had a lot of success in those 1v1 tournaments, right? In those solo tournaments, whether it be no tilt, whether it's been Brent Chunks, he's always done very well. And on the other side, we saw Morten kind of struggle in the no tilt, and then he actually struggled a bit in the first month of CRL as well. So I'm glad to see him here, and I think the key point for him is the confidence level, right? Because the work ethic and everything, I don't think anyone trains harder than he does. We see him on stream 9 hours a day, and then he's practicing as well. So once he gets the confidence in the 1v1 the same way he had it in the team aspect, I think we're going to see a lot of him.
Wallbreaker does escape. Line doesn't pick it up. So here we are 2 minutes away, double elixir time, and already Morten with a phenomenal lead, barely touched on his side.
Yeah, and I like the fact that we're seeing a lot of Valk today when we're seeing miners because of how much graveyard there is, right? Both players that we've seen run miner decks have used Valk instead of Knight, and that's so much better for defense, because if you take that away, he doesn't really have anything to defend. He's gonna have Snowball for the bats or for the Spear Goblins, so he needs to be careful. But he's gotten so much chip damage with those Spear Goblins and with just one wall breaker hitting that at this point I think it's time to play it safe.
Second Tesla down, working on that Mega Knight. Does it escape to tower? It does not. And this miner goes right to the front spot, 652 to 2419. Again, a breeze has barely put a chill on the side of Morten's Tower's Line, in a lot of trouble as we go into sudden death.
Yeah, that fast cycle of Teslas in the middle of the map is so annoying for Line, right? He has a lot of troops, yeah, but none of them can actually get to the Tesla, and the DPS of having two Teslas and the Valk tanking for so long is just so hard for him to get any damage and for him to really make anything out of a push.
Minor placement variants working out very well for Morten so far, a couple in a row that Line has failed to pick up. Now Mega Knight down with the Hunter. Do we see a graveyard here? No, Fisherman instead trying to find some way to break past those Teslas.
Yeah, and he did force the defensive miner, which is good, right? You're seeing that he's having to force him out of cycle, but at the end of the day, he's just has so many little troops that can distract, and he just had no chance.
And there at the end, we saw maybe a little bit of a... I mean, look, it's hard to say anything's a misplay when in that moment when you're just trying to find some way to make something happen. But you saw that. Try to snowball for the graveyard, get something on tower, and Morten goes, oh, you have literally nothing to stop a wall breaker? Here we go. Here's 2 right down the lane.
Yeah, I think at that point, Line knew that it was like an all or nothing, right? He had so much damage on his own tower, and eventually the miners were going to chip. He does have a fireball. It's not one of those miner decks that doesn't have a big spell. So he knew that either I throw a snowball here and I get some nice graveyard magic like we've seen sometimes, or it's basically over.
So here we go. There's the finish. Snowball comes down. Easy road for those wall breakers to the tower, and Morten takes a pretty solid GG here in game number 1. Now has match point going into game number 2. And, you know, just to give a little context here, it's not just match point. It's way bigger than that, because a win here in game 2 does guarantee you a spot in that overall monthly final, meaning that you're guaranteed $10,000 at minimum with the win here. So not only that, but you have the extra life for that championship.
Yeah, and not a bad weekend, right? When you can secure 10,000, you can secure top 2 in points as well. Because look, you're seeing someone in Morten that he's been there, he's won championships in CRL West, but we all know he wants the world finals. At the end of the day, yeah, he wants to win these, but he wants that world finals win. He's been so close. So I think for him, the points are also a big deal. And I think another big aspect that we have to talk about is Morten still has bomb tower available. He has a lot of the troops that we've seen very meta, right? He still has his graveyard if he wants to use it. So I think he's in a very, very good spot.
Well, let's see what he goes with here. And, you know, wall breakers game 1, bait number 2. If we go to game 3, I'm going to say 50-50 shot that he plays Royal Hogs just for the full Morten trifecta.
I wouldn't mind seeing it, and I love that we're seeing bait, because if there's one person that can play bait at this level, it's definitely Morten.
Although with the Skarmy looking like this might be the little Chen deck. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Royal Giant, either a Mega Knight or Giant Skeleton, and no direct damage spells at all. And it's looking more and more like that. The deck popularized by Nova Esports Pro Little Chen in the 2018 World Finals.
Yeah, and even though it is a very different style of bait, at the end of the day, when we've seen this deck work, it's usually the bait cards that end up taking it for the win. So yeah, we're gonna see the RG, we're gonna see this heavy Giant Skeleton, but it all comes down to how well he can bait out the spells and get a lot of this chip damage.
How happy is Morten right now to see he's up against Zap in this matchup?
Yeah, it's definitely a good feeling anytime you're playing bait, and the fact that you have a fisherman and he has Hog also is putting a smile on his face, I'm sure.
Although a very cheeky Zap there from the South Korean, hitting that fish boy right by the King Tower, stalling out the Hog pull to the tower. But as you saw, yeah, Eric, that connection on the right-hand side, a lot of rough.
Yeah, that second connection on the Hunter hurts, because I think he expected one hit, and you know what? With one hit, you're kind of okay. You're even on damage, but that second hit, 400 extra, it hurts. And good protection here as well on the Dark Goblin, right? Because they basically took out that Valk.
Valkyrie will go down, did run through the Skarmy, but take a look at this. Princess going to be nice and deep, going to stop the Musketeer. So about 6 on the board, let's call it 5 with the damage to the Fisherman, and that's about the difference in elixir between these two as we go into double elixir time. But with those extra hits, it's getting worse and worse for Line.
Yeah, the problem is he doesn't really have anything that can take care of a Fisherman once the Valk is out of the playing field, right? So he was able to actually play the Fisherman higher, force out more defenses, force out the bats for the Princess, and he's playing this so well. He's keeping it on his side of the field at all times, Morten. He knows exactly the cycle that he's playing against, and I just see that this is a very, very tough match, because now you can't even Hog, right? He has Fisherman back in cycle. He can just Fisherman on the left, and yes, he can zap, but overall, I think it's just going to be a tough road for him to get back into this.
This Mortar, though, doing a lot of work on the right-hand side. That's a few shots, going to get at least one more. Royal Giant finally comes down, but just like that, the lead does change as we go into sudden death. 28 HP separating these two. It is Line with the lead, and Morten's going to have to take at least one Hog shot here.
Yeah, and I think that timing was a bit off. I would have liked to see him defend more than actually Goblin Barrel, just because the Goblins were already in the back for Line, which easily defended that Goblin Barrel, and instead he took a Hog hit. But this is a pretty strong push.
600 HP on that right-hand tower. Mortar with the bats, and the bats just won't go away. Royal Giant not going to get a shot on tower here, I don't believe. Does not do it.
Yeah, that cannon on the Royal Giant was definitely loaded up, though. He positioned himself, and I thought he was actually going to get a last-minute hit there. He's very fortunate, Line, because if that takes a hit, I'm pretty sure we were going to see a game over.
Protection here for the Princess. Goes for the full send. Does Morton. Doesn't get it on tower, though. Mortar here is not going to connect, but no way for the Hog. Is the Fisherman going to be there fast enough? Fisherman does get a zap on it.
Yeah.
Beautiful play by Line. GG Line. We said maybe Morton would be happy about the zap. Instead, the zap was all about that Fisherman. 2 big-time plays from Line to tie this thing up.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning, Morton had everything he wanted, and then he kind of lost control of the match little by little. That Mortar, when it started to get, I think he got like 4 or 5 hits. That's where everything went a little bit downhill for him. He put in a RG last minute just to stop getting that damage when the Mortar had like, what, 1/4 of the life left, and he had already set up a Mortar defensively. So the RG also died to that, and it was just, I mean, credit to Line in this matchup to get it out.
Yeah, those zaps were phenomenal. Here you go, the killing blow. And this is just one of those moments where you look at it from the early and you go, hey, Goblin Barrel versus Zap. This is going to be pretty brutal, hard to get to the Princess. And it was difficult for Line to get to those Princesses, but it ended up not being critical. Instead, those Hog hits coming through huge. And the real challenge ended up being controlling the Hog on Morton's side rather than controlling the Goblin Barrels on Line's side.
Yeah, I think if I was Morton and I look back on this match, I would have liked to play it a little more defensively, get control of the defenses, make sure the Hogs are not getting those hits, force out a lot more of the Earthquake cycle than giving up a hit every time, right? Because it seemed like every time Line played a Hog, it was getting to tower, and he did have defenses for it. I think he just got a little ahead of himself, wanted to secure that top 2, that final spot, and I want to see him calm down and play more of his style.
Yep. Well, keep in mind, this is not an elimination game between these two. The winner does guarantee themselves a spot in the top 2, but the loser here drops down to the elimination bracket where they will be in a top 3 spot. They will be playing against the winner of our elimination, our lower bracket competition. So we'll see who comes out on top here. Game number 3, and it's Minor Wall Breakers for Line.
Yeah, and he's playing this Minor Wall Breakers with the Magic Archer deck that I think he knows how to play extremely well. And as I say that, the miss NATO on the tower, and that's tower down. You never want to start like that.
Yeah, and see Morton just kind of sit back. Morton's not celebrating. He's just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess this is how we're doing it.
I think I haven't seen Morton celebrate until he gets first place ever. Morton has one thing about him, and that he has full concentration until he actually wins. We've seen a lot of players, right, are very emotional. They like to, you know, when they get a tower down, when the game is in their control, they show that emotion. Morton is stone cold until he actually wins.
Wow, and I think Line's just throwing in the towel here. You saw him let the Prince go all the way in. He's playing perfunctory Clash Royale right now. I guess maybe not trying to put the pedal on the metal. And, you know, you talk about Morton celebration. You and I were both there when SK won the Western Championship. And look at this, Line putting a little bit of show on here, and he might be able to get this tower down. I think he might start regretting letting that Prince connect on the right-hand side.
Yeah, and just to that point, I definitely was there because I was on the other side of the... I was on the lost column of that World Championship, of the CRL West Championship. But yeah, even though he's getting a lot of damage, and we saw how good Line was with this deck yesterday, right? I think if he didn't make that mistake, this actually would have been a great match. But even if he takes this tower down, you have a minor deck, and getting 2 towers down is going to be very, very tough for him with Morton having this much damage on the other one.
Good wall breaker kite here with the Prince. It does go for a full circle all the way around, and a nice, the Magic Archer does not connect on that angle. NATO trying to get a little bit more in. This tower could go down here in 1 minute. Going to be a tall order, but now down to 530. The point that I was trying to say was that even with that moment, Eric, even in that championship, you didn't really see Morton celebrating much. So I don't know when we'll ever see Morton go full celebration. We do see Line go full send, and now we are in a 2-tower game, and he does have some decent defensive options, although that Electro Giant if he does have NATO, well, the Lightning says bye-bye to the Magic Archer.
Yeah, even just Lightning cycling, I think he wins this game just because he has 600, and you know how many pushes it takes for that miner to actually take down the left side tower. So Morten at this point can just overall defend. He needs to be really careful with the Magic Archers. That's basically why he lost the first tower on the right side. So as long as he's aware of that, make sure that he doesn't give anything lined up. With that bomber hit, I think it's over. Yeah.
The pocket bomber, not the common way, not a super common play that you see these days, but the pocket bomber plus Lightning does take it. And Morten is going through to our winners final.
Yeah.
Awaiting one of the 3 remaining players. And don't worry if you're a Line fan, he's still in the mix. We'll see him again fairly soon. But this is it. This is the whole game. Boil it down to a missed NATO. GG, Morten's guaranteed at least 10K.
Yeah, when you miss a NATO, sometimes it's game over. It depends on the troop you miss it, right? And he missed it on a troop that can actually take your whole tower. If it would have been something else that just took 1,000 damage, he could have got back into it, but at this point it was just over. Now it's super important for Line to kind of reset mentally, right? Because it's not a typical loss. You lost because of a mistake that you generally wouldn't see, but you still have a chance. You have a chance to fight back at Morten. You're not eliminated. It is tough, but it's part of being a pro player, right?
Yeah, that's an important one. And look, you look at Line in the situation, he still is the top 3, but you have to wonder how much in his mind is going, that was a $4,000 tornado.
Yeah.
Right? It's a $6,000 for 3rd place, $10,000 for 2nd place. And so, yeah, I don't know if he has a team behind him, coaches with him, any sort of support system right now, but someone to help kind of smooth out the wrinkles and get him ready to go back in here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, that when you put it that way, it hurts a little bit more. I hadn't really processed it in the $4,000 tornado way. I'm glad when I miss tornadoes, it's just basically my chat making fun of you and not $4,000. But it is what it is. You are a pro player. It already happened. You need to get back into it. You have 2 players that are waiting for you in the lower bracket that are playing really, really well. So you need to be at the top of your game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Line, which one of those 2 players would you rather face? You have the all-time #1 guy on ladder, and one of the all-time greats who, when he's at his best, is very, very difficult to beat. One of the hardest guys to play against in the world. If you're Line, would you rather be facing Air Surfer or Igor?
I think at this point, I'd rather be facing Igor just because of the fact that I've already beat him, right? So mentally, I think it adds a little bit more of confidence to Line. He played him yesterday. He kind of outplayed him in that last game, right? With this same deck that we just saw. So I think if I'm Line at this point, I'd rather play Igor.
Well, we'll see in a little bit who he goes up against. Look at the decks here, and this was game #1, Minor Wallbreakers Valk. And this was pretty easily controlled there. Fireball, nice for the Zappies. The Graveyard never quite getting in rhythm. It felt like in both of these, obviously the second game there was a mistake, but it felt like in this one as well, Morten was never out of the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think Morten had complete control of every game except that second game at the end. And I also like to point out that Morten isn't going to the usual, right? Yes, the deck styles are his style. He has bait, he has wall breakers, but it's not the usual things that we see when we see the wall breakers. So I like that he's experimenting a little bit. He's staying in the comfort zone, but keeping his opponent guessing.
Here we go, game #2. And it's one of those ones where this one went nicely for Line. Really, really well played. Morten was looking good for a minute, but getting out of cycle. And this Zap played such a key role in this matchup.
Yeah, as much as it hurts you defensively, offensively, it's the reason he won. That Hog got hits because of how creative he was with the Zap. Most people would have tried to save it to mitigate the damage on his own tower, but he said, no, I'm actually going to go on the offensive with my Zaps, get that Fisherman reset to make sure my Hogs get hits.
And not the way you ever want to see a great BO3 like this one get finished, but did go that way. NATOs in both sides. One NATO played properly, one NATO played improperly, and that's all she wrote. Morten taking game #3. Now, again, looking at this matchup, barring the mistake, how do you feel about it?
I actually don't mind it for Morten at the end of it because of how strong this deck is with the Lightning. And if you look at the defenses on the NATO Lightning, I don't think he's actually going to be able to do much. But I also want to give Morten some style points, right? Not everyone can finish a game with a bomber in the pocket. So I'll give him that. Yeah, the NATO miss was kind of rough, but on the other hand, we got to see something that we don't see usually.
So there you go. You see both players advancing in a way in the bracket as Morten goes on to our overall grand final. guaranteed 10,000 with a shot at the championship. But now we're going to go on to our next matchup of Hazard, a.k.a. Igor, versus Air Surfer. And again, you see waiting for the winner of that one is going to be Line, who does, again, sort of advance. He's guaranteed top 3. Of course, he'd love to be guaranteed that top 2.
Yeah, it's definitely rough, but right now I want to focus on this match coming up. Igor and Air Surfer are 2 players that are probably at the top of the game when it comes to control decks, right? So it's going to be a battle of control. I want to see what Igor is going to do as far as the Mortar Miner, because that's kind of been his story, not only here, but in the qualifiers as well. Sometimes he decides to put them both in one deck. Sometimes he splits them up. And Air Surfer on the other side, will he experiment a lot more? I think he brought back George and Razor kind of in analysis, if I'm not wrong. I saw on Twitter something like that, and it definitely worked out for him in the first match. So that's going to be key as well.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You talk about analysis. There are some players who love analysis. Air Surfer, known for a long time, has worked with trainer Dippets, a.k.a. George, for a long time, teammates with Razor. He loves having a team behind him to help with those decisions. Whereas the other side of it, Igor is someone who does not particularly love analysis. 2 completely different approaches to the game.
Yeah, I actually coached Razor and the Igor, so I know both different sides of this. Razor is a very, very analytical person. So the fact that Air Surfer has him on his side, combined with George Dippets, who was an analyst as well, is key for him. But like you said, Igor just doesn't believe in analysis. It's not his play style. He believes in comfort and what he feels confident with. So it's 2 completely different things.
We talk about that No-Tilt World Championship, and quite famously in a best of 5, I think against Jupiter King, Igor ran the exact same mortar deck 4 times in a row. Ended up costing him that match in the long run, but you know, that's the sort of mentality that Igor has. Now, both these guys are very stubborn, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have the feeling that you'll expect. I don't know if we're going to see Mortar Miner here. Maybe this is Miner Wall Breakers. We'll see what Igor comes out with. Even though it's not meta, even though it's not finishing high, because of that sort of that belief in themselves, I would not be 1,000% surprised if Air Surfer ran Expo at some point in this best of 3.
I would love to see it. I know a lot of people don't love Expo, but when you watch someone like Air Surfer play it, you see the art in it, right? The beauty in the cycle. He's never missing a placement. He knows exactly when to play defensive, when to play offensive. It's the same thing that I love to see from Igor when he's playing Mortars. A lot of people feel that Mortar is actually something that needs to get on tower, something that you have to play defensively most of the game. I've talked to him a bunch, and I know that some of, if not 50% of the Mortars he plays offensively are just simply to bait out troops of the defense. So it's something more of like, I love to see them play it.
Absolutely. And you know, log means most likely not going to be seeing an Expo out of Air Surfer in this best of 3, but yeah, a boy can dream, as they say.
Yeah, the archers, the log, the skellies, he kind of took our imagination away with it, but you know what, maybe if he moves on, he'll give us that little surprise that we want later on.
Here we go. First minute and a half, minute 40 away. And the lead just ever so slightly going to Igor. And you're seeing both these guys play at a high level already. You saw the Miner go to the back and pull the Knight away of Air Surfer, but then the Skeleton's high to control the Valkyrie. So both these guys playing levels upon levels.
And I like that we're seeing a lot more Tesla today in the matches, because it is so strong against these hog decks, right? It's even strong against when you're playing against Graveyard, because you can put that on the bridge, the Magic Archers as well. It's a very, very good troop in what we're seeing of the meta in this tournament. Not the meta in Clash overall, but what we've seen this weekend.
And this is, you know, despite the fact that Hog Rider is in the deck here of Air Surfer, this is a very control-y matchup. Yeah. Igor/Hazard looking like he's doing, you know, a minor control deck. And even though this is Hog EQ, this is a very control-oriented version of Hog, very defensive-oriented.
Yeah, the advantage that Igor has here when he's playing against this specific Hog EQ deck is that he has 3 spells, but one of them doesn't reach tower, right? So he can be a little more comfortable on the spell cycle side of the matchup, as opposed to if he had that snowball instead of the delivery, he did have to be a lot more careful not to take any damage on tower.
So here we go, heading into sudden death overtime. It's still nearly the thinnest of margins. That poison will extend it a bit, but not far between these two. Yeah. Hazard does have the lead.
Yeah, and I think slowly he's chipping away a little bit more and more every time. I don't know if he's going to be able to get a Tesla down here. He does get it last minute. He needs to make sure he keeps that in cycle. That hog hit is so important. I can't believe it actually hit tower.
And now
They're
that
good
log adds
poison,
to
though.
it.
Yeah.
12-14. Yeah, solid poison here on the other side. Hog Rider coming in with the Earthquake. And Tesla does not get there. Log and Valk do their work. 1190 to 1040.
This match is so close, and I think it's going to be that way until the end. Every time that Igor is playing the miners offensively, he's doing it with the poison to try and get a little bit of damage. And as I say that, okay, he actually does the poison. I was like, you left me standing here with my mouth open. You know, as soon as you say it, it doesn't happen. But no, he did poison, and I think that's super important because if he gets it down as soon as the miner gets there, he's obviously going to get a couple hits just because the skellies and the archers are going to die.
Air Surfer doing a good job of varying his defenses right now. Skeletons are in different places every time. Archer's high this time. And
Good
here
Tesla.
we go. A nice, yeah, that Tesla was great outside of the Earthquake. And these are the two guessing games, right? The Tesla versus the Earthquake on the side of Igor's side of the board, and then the Miner versus the Knight or the Skeletons over on Air Surfer's side of the board.
Yeah, and I expect the miner to come in here if he wants to finish it off. Yeah, it's going to come in at the back. Good log as well because that Valk might actually get a hit now. It forces out the archers. He's not going to be able to have those for defense, and this is pretty much game over.
Can the log beat it? Can the log beat the ticks? The log,
No!
19 HP! The log gets there, and Air Surfer throws out the gold emote, but you know he can't believe it.
Wow. I can't believe it either. I thought it was game over. I saw the poison on tower. I thought it was definitely going to be in time. Plus the miner, right? I think he catches the miner at the end. That gives him just that extra time for the log to get there. And I mean, it doesn't get any closer than that.
That is absolutely wild. I mean, it can get a little closer. You were part of one of those games, but man, that is absolutely insane. That's what poison will do to you. You have to have those 8 seconds. That tick takes a long time and takes a very long time when there's a log that goes a whole lot faster.
Yeah, I thought once he forced out the archers, it gave him just enough time to actually get the damage. I thought that was the key turning point, but it wasn't enough. And like you said, the difference between having an earthquake, having a fireball, lightning, all that is that it's instant damage. Poison is damage over time, and in this instance, it hurt him.
It hurt him quite a lot. So game number 1 going to Air Surfer, and that first game had everything I think that we wanted from it, right? It had really high level micro, had this 2 very interesting battles of on, again, like I said before, on Igor's side of the board, on Hazard's side of the board, the Earthquake versus Tesla, other side, the Miner versus the Miner catches, and then of course a photo finish. And right now you got to imagine the Air Surfer's feeling pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think Air Surfer didn't expect to pull out the win at the end there the way he did. This matchup wasn't as good as it seems. And you also did beat Igor with his miner deck. That's huge for this set. Once you can take that miner deck away from Igor and not only come up with the win, you have to be feeling good.
So spears on both sides. It's going to be a graveyard versus graveyard matchup potentially. No, looking like Dart Goblin, very interesting choice.
Yeah, if it's a graveyard matchup and you have Dark Goblin, you're happy. So I think Air Surfer was praying that you're right. We are going to see a cannon card on both ends. Most of the time when we see this interaction, it'll just end up leading to nothing. That actually will get in front of the Mega Knight, which is, in this instant, good for Igor, just because if not, that was going to be a pain to get out of the way, right? He was going to have to be forced to use the Hunter completely on the cannon card, and overall, it's not that bad of an interaction because the Mega Minion does live.
Mega Knight does get 1 swipe on tower. Air Surfer choosing to eat the damage here rather than spend. He knows he has the elixir advantage, and here we go. Goblin Barrel on tower, Snowball in reply.
Yeah, having Snowball is not the greatest when you're going up against a match like this because of the Dark Goblin and all the bait. It's going to be very hard for him to stay in the match and not get outcycled.
Spears will chip a little bit too. So both these guys being very cautious in this one. I think they both have an idea of how quickly this particular game could turn upside down.
Yeah, he has so much bait as well that I think even some of these skellies are going to get on tower. It's looking good for Air Surfer. I think the biggest key point that Air Surfer needs to be careful of is not to go too aggressive because his deck is the heavier version in this matchup. So as long as he plays defensive, I actually think he's very well placed. And
so
arrows, I like the arrow cycle as well, just because if not, the Mega Minion was probably going to end up getting a hit, or you know, it doesn't hurt to cycle, get a little bit extra damage. He's gonna have to snowball that every time, and now he can just scar me whenever he wants, right?
Yeah, Snowball again. I was wondering if Igor was running a second spell here but clearly not one that's going to go well on those Goblin Barrels. So here we go. Royal Giant going to get pulled right into the pocket and get a couple shots on that left-hand tower. And this is a huge lead right now for Air Surfer.
And on top with the arrows cycled on the tower, it actually took out the cannon cart, which is key for him because now his cannon cart is free to do whatever he wants, right? In the past interactions, we've seen that the cannon carts have taken each other out. They basically they turn into cannons and not carts on their respective sides, but now he's going to have to deal with it, and it's going to be pretty tough.
So there we see the arrows come out. Are you a little surprised the arrows didn't come out on at least the second of those 2 Goblin Barrels?
Yeah, I'm surprised, not even on the Goblin Barrels, but when he was taking all that damage from the Skarmy, he actually originally played a cannon cart when he could have just played arrows and it would have taken away the Skarmy. He would have saved the mechanic cart. So I don't know what was behind the decision there. It might be a little too late to make the right plays now.
Cannon cart to the right-hand side as one gets shredded. Arrows will take care of the Dark Goblin. We're in sudden death overtime. Air Surfer firmly in control, and the arrows coming right behind trying to predict those spear goblins, but the spears come out after the arrows fall.
I like that he's cycling the arrows just because when you look at the match on the other side, there's nothing really else that he needs to use the arrows for. The spear goblins aren't going to do a ton of damage onto your tower unless they get tanked for, but there's nothing really to tank for them or something that's going to cause damage. So I like that he's throwing out the arrows in a cycle when he's Goblin Barrel, because if he does put the spear goblins down, he gets extra damage, and if he doesn't, okay, I cycle them, no harm done.
So you see lots of use from Air Surfer here with the Skarmy kind of tanking a lot at the bridge, forcing out the arrows at the bridge as well. And yeah, the Hunter does not quite get enough. 701 on the left-hand side.
I thought that was great Hunter placement. I guess it might have just timing might have been a little bit off, and he does need to be careful here. I like the Mega Knight on the cannon cart, not taking any chances that a snowball or arrows was going to come onto the Skarmy, and I think this is pretty much it. That Mega Knight is going to be tanking. He has the arrows, but little by little he should be able to chip him out. Maybe another cycle Goblin Barrel as quickly as he can and force Igor to go very offensive here.
Well, it feels like Igor now is in a position where he can no longer afford to make choices about the Goblin Barrel. He has to arrows that every single time, which certainly limits his capabilities. And as you see, arrows not available because of the cycle, and that's down to 206. Air Surfer very close to putting himself through to the top 3.
Yeah, and even if he did have arrows there, it would have completely thrown away this graveyard because that Dark Goblin would have lived. So it was just a terrible position for Igor. And Air Surfer, it's a little bit of what we spoke about at the beginning, right? That analysis, I think, was on point.
Absolutely on point. You talk about putting together a team and getting it done. And here you're looking at this matchup. I mean, this was absolutely brutal for Igor.
Yeah, I don't think at any point he had any control of the match, right? We're so used to seeing Igor have control of the matches, play them the way he wants to play them, force opponents to, play his style, play when he wants it. And at this match, since the very beginning, Air Surfer just had complete control. It might have cost him a little, the fact that he didn't want to use the arrows. I'm not sure why so early, and he ended up taking so much damage that it put him in a terrible spot.
And there you go, taking a look at the finish. Air Surfer goes through, guarantees himself top 3. That's $6,000. Igor falls in 4th place, but walks away with $4,000 and a lot of points towards our world final.
Yeah, and also I don't think in this point Igor should be very worried points-wise, because he's someone, like you said earlier, he's one of the best ladder players in the world, right? We can expect him almost every season in that top 10. He'll be able to accumulate those ladder points. I think the most important thing for him to take away from this, yes, you got eliminated, but go back, figure out what you need to change in this duels format, because it's still a little bit predictable. We saw a lot of the minor with the Valks. We saw a lot of the cannon carts with the graveyards. So I think more than the points, he needs to figure out, go back and see what he can change to not be as predictable. And on the other side, I love what I'm seeing out of Air Surfer today.
So here we go, game number 1, and this game was one for the record books. I mean, absolutely beautiful game, back and forth. Talk to me about this matchup, Eric.
Yeah, this matchup is actually it's pretty even when you're looking at it. Like I said, if you had the 3 spells that hit tower, it would have been a lot easier as well if you saw a snowball, because he could actually even take away some of the damage from the miner if you needed to use it defensively. But with the royal delivery on Air Surfer's side, it makes it a lot more even. And like we saw, it was a 19 HP win. It came down to that last second log. I think both of them played it very well. Maybe Igor should have placed a little bit more of the Teslas outside of the earthquake range, but overall it really comes down to this matchup. There was nothing he could do. Yeah.
What made this so hard for Igor?
I think it's the fact that he could defend so easily on the graveyard, right? Because the push from Igor, if you're looking at that deck, it's the cannon card graveyard that's really going to be able to get you those hit points, everything that you need. But when you have a Mega Knight and then you have Dark Goblin and you have Skarmy and you have Spear Goblins, what are you gonna do? Yeah, you can arrows the Dark Goblin, great. Now you have a Skarmy, you're gonna snowball it, no problem. I'm just gonna toss in some Spear Goblins. He has so many defenses, and the cannon cart, you can't place it with anything else on the bridge because you can just Mega Knight it. It was great deck choice from Air Surfer.
Well, a hazardous matchup there for Hazard, aka Igor, but still, again, walks away with $4,000 and 50 points. But it is Air Surfer moving on to our lower bracket finals, and this is an elimination match, folks. Line, the no-tilt world champion Air Surfer, who holds the record for most global tourney wins back in the good old days of stacking over 100. This is going to be a great matchup. The winner will go on for the championship match against Morten.
Morten's just going to be sitting there watching. I'm sure he's going to be analyzing everything he sees. We've seen a lot of different decks out of Air Surfer, so I don't know if Morten rather play against Line. He already got a feel for that, but the next match right now is what we're going to focus on, and I kind of want to see what Air Surfer has cooked up for Line. These are two players that have played against each other a lot, right? We saw them in the No-Till World Championship. We saw them in the Brent Chong. We've seen them so many times play against each other that at this point, it's not only who's playing the better game, but it comes down to gameplay. It comes down to analysis, and this is going to be amazing.
Well, it's going to be amazing. We'll see it in just a couple of minutes. First, let's take a look behind the scenes at what your casters do when they're both at home and getting ready for CRL. This is how we clash.
Hey everybody, it's me, Andrew Guy, your color commentator for CRL, and this is a segment called How We Clash, where you guys are going to check out just exactly what I do to get ready for CRL every single time that we go live. I am located in sunny Santa Monica, California, where honestly this last year I've spent most of my time indoors, but when I'm not inside, I love to go biking on the bike path. I love to go out and eat. I'm a huge foodie. So when I got started in Clash Royale League, it was actually through the in-game application, essentially. There was a tab in-game that was saying that they were casting, and I love the game. I've been playing, every single day for hours a day. So I thought maybe I could marry the two worlds of like loving gaming and then actually involving hosting with gaming. So here we are with CRL being the way that I did it. Yeah, I still remember the very first time that I saw my boy Rich Slayton.
Are we wearing the same shirt, by the way?
I think we're actually wearing the exact same shirt. I have to give you mine when I'm off camera, and now they just handed me a second one. It's really interesting moving from being on location to remote broadcasting. What's changed the most is actually like the morning ritual. It's getting up a lot earlier. It's making sure that, I do my own hair. It's that I make sure that I have enough time instead of traveling. It's just making sure I plan out my morning enough. It's walking my dog, making my coffee, getting a snack, making my tea. All of the things that we usually have the luxuries of people helping us out with on set, we kind of need to make sure that we do that the morning of. And the first thing that I say to myself in the morning is a tongue twister. What did to do to die today at a minute or two till two? A distinctly difficult thing to say, but harder still to do. And there'll be tattoo at 20 till 2, a rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tum, and the dragon will come when he hears the drum at a minute or two till 2 today, at a minute or 2 till 2. I don't know what it means, but it helps me speak. I really miss the hair and makeup team. I really do. I can do my own hair. I cannot touch my own makeup. So yeah, I miss you guys. I really do, and so does my face. All right, so this is Snickers. He's a chocolate lab mix. He's a good boy, and he hangs out with me every weekend at 4 in the morning. So right now he's a little tired, huh? So this setup that I have here has evolved a lot over the last year, and I've definitely learned some things. So I used to just have 2 monitors. Now I've got like 5. I've got 5 monitors and an iPad. So I love the setup. I love the monitors. I need it. I need to run a show. I need stats. I need to see the bracket. And honestly, for me, what's the most important is I can see myself and I can see my other caster first. That really helps with that interpersonal relationship with my other caster that I don't really have anymore because we're not in person. The other things, I have to have the run a show going. That way I always know what's coming up next. Okay, right, we have match 3 coming up next between these 2 players. And then of course I have my iPad over here just in case I want to get a game in between sets. But what I'm the most proud of even though I do love the monitors, is all this cool stuff behind me that I've kind of accumulated over the years of being a CRL caster at World Finals, at WCG, just in person meeting teams. Over here, we've got the great happy, sad signs. I flip those around to the crying, angry ones every now and then. We've got the hat over here. We got the white hat. We got the black hat. And then how do you not recognize the figurines? Golden Princess on top, the log, the minion, all these things. I have the baby dragon, but that one, it's special to me. It's in my bag. My favorite piece of swag that I've ever gotten, ever, in the 3 years that I've been doing this, the 3 World Finals that I've been to, was the original World Finals pin, which is this guy right here. This is what we got in Tokyo 2018. So that's some of the coolest stuff that I've gotten over the years from Supercell. All right, everyone, that does it for me here in my studio. Thank you for checking out how we clash. Now let's get back into the action.
Hey, the Gold World Finals pin. Gotta love that one. Flexing the swag. I think I have one of those too. And a little insight for you guys. I know that Andrew does love the hair and makeup team because I have seen his hair in the morning before we get to it, and he's a big fan. But looking slick today, my friend. And talking about slick, we're to these top 3. We're to Air Surfer, Line, and Morton. And no matter how it played out, it was going to be great. And I am really excited for this third place match because there's so much pressure for both of these players.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the $6,000, but let's just talk about the fact that they faced off each other, earlier this weekend, yesterday, and we saw what Line did to Air Surfer. And then you talk about what you and Eric were speaking on, which is the history that these guys have in numerous other tournaments. There's a lot on the line here. I'm sure there's tons of respect between these two guys, but you know one of them wants to take this home just because it adds to the legacy, it adds to the story, the Line and Air Surfer rivalry, if you will.
Well, let's talk about that rivalry, Andrew, because we've talked a lot today about Line being the no-tilt world champion, but who did he beat for that no-tilt world champion? Well, the guy across from him right now, Air Surfer. These two have already met with so much on the line, with a world championship on the line. And you mentioned rivalry. They're extending that one more step today.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really was paying close attention to when you guys were broadcasting was those very, very one-sided matchups, right? We saw some really interesting stuff there between Morton and Line, and then on the other side of it, Igor played really well, but it truly felt like Air Surfer just had the game in control. And what I'm excited to see here is exactly what Air Surfer's starting with. I'm happy he's starting with Minor. Yesterday, he started playing Comfort, and it was in Game 2 when he went that all-spell, or I guess a spell cycle deck, where it felt like the wheels fell off in that set between him and Line.
Interesting to see here. The Flying Machine have not seen much of that today. Might this be Lava here in game number 1?
Yeah, could just be Lava. As you see Minor there, probably not going to be something with dual lane pressure, even though we do see the Goblin Huts. So, Rich, I think he called it pretty perfectly. We'll see how that matches up here. Line rocking what we can assume is just the Minor Wall Breakers deck with the Magic Archer, although haven't seen the Wall Breakers come out, maybe because that Goblin Hut was on the board for so long. Cage, excuse me.
Spears go to the right-hand side, and that's the Minor going to the inside. Easy King Tower activation there for Line. Baby Dragon will add a bit of damage on the right-hand side for Air Surfer, but as we go past the first minute, 1993 to 2135, that King Tower activation, though, might play a factor.
Yeah, that'll definitely help out, and I like what Air Surfer was going for there, but maybe getting a little too fancy for his own good. He goes for the Minor on top of the Knight to try to get some damage in on tower, which he does do, but also giving away that King Tower activation early.
Flying Machine connects on the left-hand side. Knight with Spears behind. Inferno Dragon up high to worry about that Knight. First minute and a half has passed. Lead moment for Line, but we'll see if Air Surfer can battle back as we get closer to double.
Yeah, Line just kind of chipping away there on the left-hand side. Now we see the full Wall Breakers finally come out. Going to be met by that Cage. And probably a Knight in response.
I was going to say, guards are an interesting choice in Lava these days. Obviously, for a long time, guards and barbarians were somewhat interchangeable, but guards have fallen out of favor. But I do think that Air Surfer is going to like having those as time goes on in this matchup.
Yeah, the guards, just a little cheaper, able to get that cycle back around a bit faster. And of course, here with looking what's on the board, that cycle being a little bit faster is going to be really nice to help with those units on the ground, and especially the Wall Breakers.
Bomb Tower in, Magic Archer plus Spears to work on the Flying Machine. Definitely has to control that. And that's one of the, you'll see how much spend Line has to put on that flying machine. Miner comes out, protection for the Knight. That's going to be a key factor in this matchup.
Yeah, really, really nice NATO there to make sure that Miner is not on top of the Magic Archer. Magic Archer still on the board. That's going to be the key to victory here for Line. Making sure he's getting a lot of value out of these Magic Archers. You see he can stack one in the back there just because arrows plus Miner is really going to be the only great way for Air Surfer to get those Magic Archers off of the board.
So here we go. Sudden Death overtime on its way. At the moment, Line does have the lead. Magic Archer goes right behind, and there you see arrows. Magic Archer, NATO to the King Tower one more time. Activation already up, but now a pretty healthy Lava Hound going to get past this Bomb Tower and get on that Princess Tower in the left-hand lane.
Yeah, even at 6 Elixir, but Air Surfer did have 2 units on the board. Pretty easily cleaned up here by Line. Line, obviously a big fan of this deck, is ahead in damage overall, and honestly, if he continues to rinse and repeat this, he should be in a good position.
Magic Archers, 2 of them down now, and again, this is one of those situations where you play against a traditional big spell, and those Magic Archers, you can't stack them like that, but here with no Fireball, no Poison, no Lightning, no problem.
Yeah, really nice arrows there to get the wall breakers off the board and get damage in on those Magic Archers that you were just talking about. They have been such a nuisance here for Air Surfer to deal with, and there you go, another set of Magic Archer, or another Magic Archer comes down with a Knight up front to help clean up that defense, ahead by about 350.
And you see the guards trying to split and do their best job to catch both the Miner and the Knight. They do clean off the Miner, but here we go. Triple Elixir on its way. This is the place where Air Surfer can put a lot of pressure on. Let's see if he's able to break on through. And you see the Flying Machine deep. Does it get into the Bomb Tower range?
Yeah, you know, this is really a tough position to be in because Air Surfer is going into the exact same lane as Line. Obviously, as this goes into double and triple, Air Surfer is starting to pull away just because his deck is so much heavier. Line has so much damage done on that left-hand side, and we're so late in the game that he can't actually switch lanes. So he's finding himself in a really, really rough position. And honestly, when we talk about deck selection from Air Surfer, this is a really brilliant call out of him going to the skies, or I mean, going to something that was dealing with the skies.
Well, we haven't seen much of Lava Hound out of Air Surfer, so the other part of that, you talk about that analysis team, and here we go. Lots of damage on that left-hand tower. This is something that maybe Line wasn't prepared for. 2 Flying Machines on the board. Miner trying to protect. Guards go to predict the Miner, but the Miner was already on defense, and this should be looking pretty good here for Air Surfer. Magic Archer trying to get on tower, can't get it done, and Air Surfer, by a hair, takes game number 1.
Yeah, you know, this is the second time that he's gone to the skies in this entire tournament. And when he did it before, it was never in game 1. So I really, really like varying things up just enough to keep your opponent guessing. Line goes with something that he's done and run a lot and had a good amount of success with. So what does Air Surfer decide to do? All right, how about if this is a deck that you love and we all know how threatening you are with it, let's give you something a little bit more difficult to deal with.
And so much of this matchup, Andrew, came down to both of them abusing the 4 Elixir ranged card that their opponent couldn't directly take off the board. You see the battles over the Magic Archers, and then you see the battles over the Flying Machines, and that was really a key factor for both of these guys. But again, you mentioned it earlier on, the closer we got the triple, the more dangerous it got for Line, and in the end, Air Surfer able to take game 1.
Yeah, so now what I want to see out of Air Surfer here is going back to his comfort, going back to something that he has a good amount of control with, whether it's Mortar Miner, whether it's just strictly control, whether it's Mortar plus Royal Hogs. I want to see him run something that he knows very well. I don't want to see him get too fancy. Heck, I mean, I'd be okay with him running Expo like you were talking about earlier. Line on the other side of it, I don't know if he's maybe getting a little bit too predictable with that deck. Obviously, it's in the past now. He doesn't have to worry about making that same mistake again with that specific deck, but I'm not exactly sure what he needs to do to adjust. Air Surfer is playing so good right now.
Well, Air Surfer, we talk about that analysis. He's had a lot of variance in the overall selection of 3 or 4 decks he brings to every single matchup. Whereas now, if in fact Razor and Dippets, Razor and George are both in Air Surfer's corner, they just saw this same deck. So now they probably have a pretty good idea what the overall construction of his dual mode battle decks are. And that gives a lot of information to that squad.
Yeah, and that's a very, very strong analysis squad to have behind you, and it makes sense when you look at the things that Air Surfer has brought to the table today and how it's matched up. That's not an accident.
Inferno Tower gonna get a little bit of EQ damage here, but not enough to let that go through on the right-hand side. Hog EQ for Line side, and potentially the same thing here for Air Surfer. That's typically what you're seeing Inferno Tower with, and there you go. The Hog comes down behind the Knight.
Yeah, no surprise there to see the mortar out for line. Every single time he's run Hog EQ, he's also run it with the mortar. Of course, the other side of it, as you were just saying with Air Surfer, we saw this in his last set of games. It worked out really, really well for him. He's got such great control with this deck and a nice cycle, but we saw that ton of damage coming down the right-hand side early.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how these two work their buildings versus the Earthquakes, right? Like, in particular, 4 Elixir for the Mortar versus 5 for the Inferno Tower. You talk about those cycles versus the Earthquake that will always be on them. We'll see how long Air Surfer falls behind with that particular piece.
Yeah, and you look at what Line's already done with just the 5 cards that he has. He's already gotten around twice on half of them. Air Surfer, on the other hand of it, he's shown all 8 with very little damage on towers. So you can kind of see how these decks stack up early on. It's pretty clear based off of the way that Line was playing that his deck is probably going to be a little bit heavier when you look at those last couple.
Well, and we also know there's not going to be a log in this deck here for Line, so that does change things a little bit. We'll see what his small spell is going to be here. Possibly a zap, possibly a snowball.
Hogs meeting each other on the opposite lane. Bunch of swarm units there to get cleaned up by one another. Looks like a little bit more damage will come on that left-hand side.
Final minute of regulation, double extra time, and it is the zap here for Line. And we did see that, of course, used to perfection against the Fisherman in the other matchup.
Valkyrie high to set the line. Now that Musketeer, or excuse me, now that Valkyrie is tanking that Knight, so the Hog Rider is getting damage in on the tower.
So this is interesting, Andrew, because we talk about the information that a player gets from seeing the decks, and right now Line does have the advantage. It's possible we go to a game number 3. If we go to a game number 3, it's very likely that the team of Razor and Dippets will have a lot to say for Air Surfer in that matchup.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the nice thing about this weekend of the dual format is, getting able to look and being able to look back in the past and every single kind of combination that these guys have brought to the table at the most important moment. I mean, again, when you talk about that analyst squad that's behind Air Surfer, I'm totally with you. I can't imagine they won't have a really nice, ace up their sleeve for Air Surfer if they get to that game.
Valk to protect the Musketeer and the tower on the right-hand side, 998 to 1286. And the spell cycle getting very aggressive here for the no-tilt world champion on that right-hand side.
Yeah, and it's almost like if you look at the cards that were available to Line first, as opposed to the cards that were available to Air Surfer first, and those quick cycle with the Earthquake being able to come out and the Hog Rider, of course, those Stab Goblins and the Bats. The cheaper cards for Air Surfer on the back end of his rotation, which is why that spell cycle started so early for Line. We saw 5 cards of his come out twice before we saw the last 4.
Zap being used at the bridge with all that DPS and still gives up a hog shot. Just like that, Air Surfer suddenly back in the lead, 757 to 704. Earthquake will change the tune for a moment.
Yeah, nice Earthquake in there, getting damage in, 583 to 704. Good stop there with the Knight cycle, just a little bit faster, top of your screen. Damage just a little bit in favor of the bottom.
EQ cycle now in the opposite direction, plus the log, and that is going to be a bit more damage than EQ plus Zap. Hog Rider in behind the Valk on the opposite side, and the Hog goes past the Inferno Tower, and Air Surfer knows it.
Yeah, he couldn't believe it. Really, really nice push there with Line. You get the Royal Delivery to come down. It feels like a strong defense, but it ends up body blocking and going Benedict Arnold on you. Pushes the Hog Rider to the right-hand side, gets on the tower, and you saw the look on Air Surfer's face in that moment. He knows exactly why he lost that game, and it was actually, unfortunately, it was his fault.
Yeah, that's just a rough one. Look, it was going to be a tight finish no matter what, so you hate to see it go that way. And for Line, who's been on the opposite end of a tight finish going the wrong direction earlier today, got to feel good for him.
Yeah, really great prediction log there from Air Surfer. Gets the Stab Goblins off the board, but there it is, that Royal. And you can see, I mean, his face kind of says it all, right? It's perfect timing, just one tile too close to the center. Needed to be one more tile to the right so that Hog Rider maybe gets pushed to the left. But that Knight there body blocking also didn't make it easy for Air Surfer to play good defense there. Very, very close. Line takes an early lead, and then that little bit of a mistake at the end seals the finish.
Here we are, all tied up. Longtime rivals for a world championship, now for a shot at a monthly championship and the chance to go up against Morton for that $20,000 grand prize for the month of March. Man, I'm very curious to see matchup-wise what happens here, because we've seen Line run this collection of decks already. You know the Air Surfer and his guys are looking at that, and I wonder if Line's looking at his 2 remaining options and going, well, they've already seen me run this one, so now I have to run this one.
Yeah, it's one of the situations where I feel like you don't bet against the analysis of Air Surfer, and maybe you go for something that is comfort, but you haven't run a lot recently, right? Maybe go for something that is like, oh man, I used to love this deck back in 2019 or whatever, and now there's a new version of it that's just a little bit different, but I haven't shown it yet. I'd like to see that out of Line, just because you talk about the analysis on the other side of the board, and an Ice Golem early out of him, maybe we're on the right page. He hasn't played Ice Golem only one other time this weekend.
You might have heard me clapping. My favorite card in the game on the board. Hey there, Snowman. Let's go.
So when we saw Line run this before with that Goblin Hut and Mega Minion, it's going to be a Cannon Cart Graveyard deck coupled with the Snowball. He's only run once this weekend, so we'll see. We'll see if Air Surfer was ready for it.
Well, I feel like you always have to be ready for Graveyard to be one of the 3 decks your opponent runs. It's so popular right now, and very curious to see. I mean, you see the Valk, you see the Spears, you see lots of responses to Graveyard here from Air Surfer.
Yep, nice Snowball in there, and literally the 2 cards you were just speaking of showing up. Spears first to bait out that Snowball, Valkyrie in late to clean up, make sure not a lot of damage comes in. Air Surfer gets that mortar down on the board.
Goblin Cage picks up the mortar aggro, and notice that it is Snowball Fireball, despite not running poison in the earlier matchups. Poison not built into this deck. Should be happy, though, with the remaining graveyard counters he has. And Archer's not so bad on their side as a graveyard counter for Line, but curious to see what that 8th and final card's going to be.
Cannon Cart up high, Air Graveyard coming out for Air Surfer. There it is, super aggressive. And now a Mega Minion plus Cannon Cart, not going to be the best defense here for a Graveyard, but fortunately, the Skellies pile up on that broken down Cannon Cart.
And this leaves Line with a slight elixir advantage, right? He's down 1 in the collector, down a half, but with 3 on the board. So forces out the response from Air Surfer, and now Spears not in the proper cycle that he wants for a potential next Graveyard push.
Yeah, and I really like that Line went patient there. He sets up the Goblin Cage. Goblin Cage is out of cycle early on. The Mortar can't come out super aggressively, and then he's also almost all the way back around to a Mortar. So if he needs that on defense, he can, but he decides to go heavy offense here with that Mortar available.
Lane switch, and now Valkyrie not available for that Graveyard defense. Those Skellies are going to pile up a little bit, and that Mega Minion gets tanked for just along for a swipe, and just like that, 1893 to 2075, Line takes the lead.
Really nice plays there from Line. Really patient, really calculated. Make sure he takes his elixir advantage and runs with it. Does a lot with it. Doesn't just set up another card or another push where he can get a little bit of damage in. He decides to go for it all. Huge push on the right-hand side, and a nice lead for him.
And the Valk has to come out to stop that Cannon Cart connection. And man, that's going to leave a big opening on the right-hand side, and there you go. A cheap threat there with the Ice Golem, but not overcommitting. Smart play here from Line.
Yeah, I really love that play. Now the Spear Goblins are out of cycle again. He shows the Ice Golem, but he's got other tanks to get Graveyards down if he needs. But it's really just about making Air Surfer make plays that he doesn't love, right? Line's not making a ton of progress right now, but he is in the mental game, Rich.
And you see that having to play the Valkyrie high on the Cannon Cart, so that means Spears get played to defend against the Graveyard. Snowball clears him out, and you see a lot of discomfort on the face of Air Surfer right now.
And this is not the Air Surfer that we want to see, right? This is not what Air Surfer needs to be doing. He's playing fine right now. He needs to calm down. He needs to breathe and just recognize, yes, this is a $6,000 match, but you're playing the game that you love. This is the best place for you to be in right now. It's just that he's really struggling with these defenses.
Well, he finally has his cycle back where he wants to defend that Graveyard with Valk, but it might be too little too late. 1022 on his right-hand tower. Going to be hard to overcome that here with just 50 seconds left.
Yeah, and the thing is, at this point now, with Line knowing exactly what the win condition and all the cards are for Air Surfer, he's able to set the line pretty easily on both sides of the board. That Goblin Hut, or Goblin Cage, is so frustrating because not only is it beefy, but then so is the Brawler.
Air Surfer trying to change the conversation, but that's Fireball value right there. And really no options for Air Surfer. Fireball comes in, Cannon Cart on defense, but he can't get a tank down, and that Graveyard does not get a whole lot. Final 20 seconds.
Yeah, really, really frustrating here for Air Surfer, trying to break through. Just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. There's a snowball in the back to clean up the Spear Goblins. And that, once again, Fireball on top as well. That should be tower down. 27 HP remains. And Air Surfer will be eliminated, walking away with $6,000 and a third-place finish.
Hey, Line played a phenomenal game here. Phenomenal matchups all the way around.
Yeah.
Very, very good in Game 2. And then that Game 3 just did a great job of getting Air Surfer out of cycle, putting the pressure on, and never taking his foot off the pedal.
And, you know, this is exactly what you wanted to see from Line. He bounces back after a really, really rough set with Morten. Morten just completely dominated that set after dropping that game. You know, he turns it around. He's back up in the finals for the rematch. Now, he's got to go back-to-back against the guy that he's already lost to in this tournament, but maybe he learned something there. We saw how much he reset in this specific matchup with Air Surfer, and I think he's ready to go for finals.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at these replays. The one thing you see over and over again is that the Spears, easy 2-2 trade for the Snowball on Line side to clean up what was ended up being the primary defense for the Graveyard, where on the other side, Graveyards didn't come down for Air Surfer very much, but those Archers, they demand 4 Elixir on their 3, and over time, just with that Ice Golem also be able to quickly tank and create pressure, just Air Surfer put in too many uncomfortable spots here.
Yeah, and that's really what it was all about, was uncomfortability. You saw in almost every single one of those replays that Air Surfer was down Elixir based off of what was on the board for Line. So that means that in every single interaction, Air Surfer was making either negative trades or playing from behind. And then you add in that mistake in Game 2, or at least that, you know, bit of misfortune in Game 2 with the Royal Delivery pushing the Hog to the right. You know, this could have been an easy 2-0 for Air Surfer, or maybe not easy, maybe a quick 2-0 for Air Surfer, but Line bounces back and just completely controls those last parts of those 2 games.
And now has a shot at Morten in the overall final, and that's going to be fascinating. Let's take a look at these decks here, and Air Surfer comes out with Lava Miner Guards in game number 1, played it very, very well, ended up getting a big-time win.
Yeah, I really like this deck selection from Air Surfer. You know, we saw it one other time in the tournament, and it was earlier, right? It was I think in his second matchup of yesterday. So this is something that is not as on brand for Air Surfer, and it matched up really well against this deck that Line loves in this tournament.
Taking a look at deck number 2, the matchup here in just a moment, and this is where Line gets things back, and it's Hog EQ versus Hog EQ, and in the end, Line able to get around a whole lot more quickly, able to make some creative defenses against those Hog Riders and take a big-time win here in number 2 as well. Yeah,
it was one of those things where you wonder what the starting hands looked like from both of these players, looking at the fortune of Line being able to get his cheapest cards plus Earthquake and Hog Rider in his starting hand and be able to cycle those twice before Air Surfer was really able to create any offense, made it so that that game was a really tough one for Air Surfer to kind of hang in. And then, of course, again, that Royal Delivery at the very end. Let's take a look here at deck number 3. Deck 3, the game that we just saw, Graveyard versus Graveyard, but the control by Line was through the roof, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, when this one first started, I saw the Valk and the Spears, and it kind of felt like it was easier defense on his side. But in the reality, that whole relationship of the Spears versus the Archers and how easy it was for Line to make those defenses difficult for Air Surfer completely turned the game his direction, and a nice come-from-behind win for the South Korean, and that's a $10,000 in his pocket. Air Surfer goes home in 3rd place with quite a bit of money and, of course, points towards that World Final.
So far this weekend, Line is the only man that has cut the German, as they say. Morten, the only time he dropped a game was against Line in that last set. Otherwise, he's gone 6-1 this weekend. A completely dominant performance from SK's Morten, the German, a man that we have all known to come and love as one of the best in the game. Line on the other side of it, another pro, another stellar player, one of the most calculated guys in the game. Both of them seem to be firing on all cylinders right now, except Line in that last set against Morten.
Yeah, that one tornado mistake. Seems like he's shaking it off, though, which is very, very important. But here's the important thing in terms of context for this matchup. Yes, it's a championship matchup, but remember, Morten is still in the winner's bracket. Morten has not lost yet, and every single player in this bracket has one loss to give for an overall match. So Line, if he wants to win this championship, has to beat Morten in this best of 3 and then beat him in a second best of 3. Morten just has to win 2 games here in this opener, and it's all GG.
And this is one of the guys in the world that is probably maybe even the last guy in the world that you want to play against is Morten, right? I mean, this is a guy that is incredibly, incredibly talented and versatile. He's dialed in right now. We heard a lot of people say it. Eric said it. Josh said it. I believe you and I have both said it. It just seems like everything is clicking for Morten right now. And if you talk about a guy where things haven't been clicking for him in the past with the amount of success that he's had, it's a really scary person to run into. And I think his record really showcases that, Rich.
Yeah, but let's talk about the one place that Morten tends not to click, and that's in the final match. That's the championship match, and he's up against a guy who has won championships, right? Now, again, Morten won the Clash Royale League Western Championship. You could say that maybe that championship, Team Liquid, was a bit exhausted after qualifying for Worlds with their third place match, so it's an interesting dynamic there, of course, but this is a question of, does Morten think about that as he goes into this championship, or is he just focused exclusively on the game in front of him?
Well, since you got to finish off with that lovely statement, then I'm going to put you in the hot seat first, man. What's your prediction going into this matchup? Who do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be Morten, or is it going to be Line walking away with that 20 grand at the end of these maybe 2 sets?
Man, that's so hard to call, but I have to go with Morten. I have to pick him here. We've talked about how well he's been playing. Yes, there might be nerves. Yes, there might be the questions in his head of, I've been here before, can I close things out? But it's not a world championship yet. It's just a monthly championship. You know, his attitude when he lost the ladder final, that last second number 1 to number 2 for ladder in this season. Yeah. He's got a good mentality. I think he gets it together here and gets the win. Yeah, and admirable mentality, incredibly humble. I'm going to go with my South Korean brother. I mean, why not? Represent. Let's go. I feel that Line learned a lot from his last matchup with Morten. I saw some really great stuff out of him from Air Surfer, who honestly, when I saw Air Surfer play against Hazard, I didn't think that Line was going to beat him. He looked so clean, dialed, great plays throughout that. And so what Line did after dropping that set against Morten, being able to bounce back that quick mentally, I am all in for Line right now. Yeah, it's look, I can't argue against you. It's you asked me to pick, is it going to be heads or tails? And I'm going to go with heads on this one. But either one of these guys, of course, a more than deserving monthly champion. And it's really going to come down to, of course, what they bring in deck-wise to this last one. We'll see what kind of variants they have. They've both had their rhythms so far, things they've leaned on. I'm curious to see if we see anyone take a big change and surprise us in this first best of 3.
Well, you know, one of the biggest things with Morten that we've always talked about is it doesn't matter the matchup, it's still Morten, right? That's the matchup. It's him. It's not the deck. So what I want to see out of him is running what he's really good with. We've seen a lot of comfort out of him, but he knows so many decks so well, and he's played them all in high-pressure situations. I just want to see him do something that is not easily predictable, even if that just means changing up the variants of the order that he comes out with his comfort decks. I don't actually mind Morten playing into bad matchups because he's played out of them so many times. Line on the other side, I was going to say
the same thing,
right? And then Line on the other side, we've seen so much Magic Archer NATO wall breakers from him. I just want to see maybe that broken up. Maybe throw the Magic Archer into a dual lane pressure deck as opposed to just your comfort.
So Ice Spirit and Spears to open up, Line with the Electro Spirit. Oh, wow. So both guys showing a little bit of difference here, a little variance in game number 1. This is the championship of our March final. And wow, it's going to be a good one. Remember, keep this in mind. For those of you watching, Morten in the winner's bracket just has to win this best of 3 to be our March champion. Line has to win this one and another to take that crown.
So you see that Earthquake coming out with the Hunter, a really cheap cycle around maybe Royal Giant from the top of our screen from Line. Usually you see a handful of those cards paired with him. No, he goes Royal Hogs. Instead, I had half of it right.
Well, he sees the Valkyrie and the Mortar go to the left-hand lane. Two top counters for Morten in this matchup, and he decides to push that right-hand lane. Delivery certainly helpful for the German.
Morten going Mortar, Miner, Earthquake. Valkyrie there is his big tank card. That Valkyrie going to help a lot with those Royal Hogs in conjunction with the delivery, and the Ice Spirit should be a way for Morten to play pretty clean defense and still have his Mortar available for other situations.
Yeah, very curious to see how much he plays that mortar defensively versus offensively. Right, we'll see about the split pigs. That's the one thing that might cause some overspending from him. As we go past the midway point of regulation time, though, it is Morten in the lead, 1880 to 2114.
And Earthquake cycle. Just keep going. Morten kind of further his lead early on.
Both these decks get around fairly quickly, and look at that. Both the Valk and the Mortar played high. Mortar does not get the shot off, but the piggies don't get anywhere either.
Yeah, Earthquake getting a little bit of damage in. A lot of elixir spent by both of those guys. Now that Hunter's going to turn, Spear Goblin's going to get some damage in, and that Valkyrie going to clean them off the board.
Morten continue to chip away at that left-hand side, does have the lead. Now pigs all into the right, and the Hunter with the delivery. Again, nice cleanup here, and as you talked about before, not having to play Mortar on defense.
Yeah, Hunter, delivery, Ice Spirit. He gets a great counter push here. He's got pressure in both lanes, which is what he needs to do, right? Now he's got a split push on the right-hand side that does demand just a little bit of attention, and then he gets to get that miner in on the left-hand side. Really nice stuff there from Morten. But, you know, I'm very curious to see how he's going to continue up those stellar defenses as we keep getting that elixir flowing a little bit faster and faster.
And two slight misreads there from Morten. One, probably didn't expect the Hunter to connect on the left-hand side, and then the Valk timing just off for the Electro Spirit, so no King Tower activation comes from that. Still, he does have the lead, 974, but Line starting to fire back, 1127 on the right-hand lane.
It's because Line is recognizing maybe I don't use my Royal Hogs other than these moments to make sure he overspends on defense, and then it's just all cycle for him. Log cycle, Earthquake cycle, try to get chip damage in with one of your spirits. That's what's happening. There's the log again. Hogs don't touch the tower, but now you can see they're only separated by 81 HP. So now Morten trying to speed up his cycle.
And good front and backdrop there for Line to pick up that miner. Valkyrie a little bit high here, but the Ice Spirit will help stop those pigs.
And the Mortar gets a shot on tower. That gets the wow out of line. I don't think anyone thought that Mortar was in the right position, but it locked on something, gets the shot on tower, 358 to 707.
And that could be enough on its own. Miner goes to the front, EQ comes in, and this is going to be the Miner. Does it get his last shot? No, but back to one more Earthquake. Morten just going to play a little bit of defense, play this one safe, and get the job done. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about all things going Morten's way, and that is a great example of it. Somehow, some way. What? Oh, I was like, where's the Earthquake, man? Where is it?
You see the expression, the over-the-top show of emotion from Morten. He does one of these and then a...
Yeah,
and that's when you know Morten feels like it was tight.
He's halfway to 20 grand. He really is. He gets that first game out of the way. Really great plays. That mortar shot getting on top of the tower. We get the wow out of line. I don't think any of us thought that was going to connect. Somehow it does. And the German staying near perfect through every single one of his sets. He's dropped a game. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. One game so far. And he's done it with so many different decks.
Well, you talked about it. You called it right at the beginning of this match, Andrew, that if he can find ways, to not have to play Mortar on defense, he'll get a lot of value from that. So not only did those Earthquakes not get the value that maybe Line wanted, but it also allowed for the Mortar shot that we talked about offensively to get that win. So huge moment there for Morten, and now he is one game away from our March championship.
Yeah, and just, you know, one fun thing to kind of take a look at here is the exact same elixir spent, but to kind of, you know, echo what we heard from Josh yesterday is that you want your opponent to make more plays than you because it gives the potential for them to make more mistakes. Now, maybe that's what happened in this game, maybe it's not, but it's just kind of fun to look at the exact same elixir spent, 5 more cards coming out of line, and a game that went in Morten's favor by just a hair. Seems like it could be correlated.
It was a fun back and forth in that one. It really felt for a minute there like Line can run away with it maybe, but Morten does lock it down. And now we go into game number 2, and very curious to see what these two guys bring out.
It's very, you know, kind of fun to look at the fact that Morten's been working so hard for so long to be the best in the world. And now, in a potential to be the best in the world, it's only in our monthly finals, right? Normally, when you find out you're the best in the world, it's at the World Championship. But because CRL is so much more competitive this year, it's basically a World Championship level of competition every single month.
That's a great way to put it, Andrew. It's a monthly World Championship because it is literally every single player, right? Top 1,000 ladder, that brutal Swiss bracket, the top 32 group stage, and then here to the top 8. It's a legit World Championship, and wow, that's the fact that we can do that every single month is just a joy.
Yeah, and you know what else is a joy? Is this guy playing any form of log bait. It just makes me so happy.
And this is not the little Chen deck. This is not the Royal Giant Skeleton log bait. This is straight up log bait, and the Princess stays on the board.
You see the little bit of a nod there from Morten, recognizing how, I mean, that was such a brilliant sequence that Princess was able to survive and gets one more shot on the tower, and he's actually still down in damage. But it's those little plays that he's making early on that are really going to stack up as we keep moving through this one.
If you're a fan of Morten, this is what you want to see. You want to see one of the all-time greatest log bait players on the planet playing log bait with $20,000 on the line.
Yeah, and there it is. He's already starting it. Barb Barrel is the card, so he's going to start to misplace those Goblin Barrels just one tile off in either direction, left or right, so that Barb Barrel has to be perfectly placed to get 100% mitigation.
Princess trying to go to work there. Could this turn into a King Tower activation? I don't believe that the Baby Dragon comes in close enough. No, the Stab Goblin does kite it away, 21-24 to 1979 with 1 minute left, and that outside placement just trying to avoid the King Tower activation, knowing he's against NATO.
Still gets a nice stab in there from the Goblins. Line would have maybe liked to play that one more tile away, I think, to mitigate 100%. Here we go, Giant Skeleton plus Ice Wizard at the bridge.
And this is what Line's going to do. He's going to play this very defensive for a long time. He has the Barb Barrel. He has ways to get to that Princess. He's going to try to play as defensive as possible, and there goes the King Tower activation. And Morten kind of trying to decide if he wants to be worried about the Barb Barrel or the NATO in that moment. When we get to that late double and triple elixir, we'll start seeing what Line can do with those balloons.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he's doing there. He's waiting to see if, you know, he has to use the Barb Barrel or the NATO, and on Morten's other side of it, like you were saying, that's what he's kind of worried about. Which one do I have to worry about in this instance? Line playing incredibly patiently. He picks the correct response both times, gets the King Tower activation, and now we finally get his first balloon push in. It's going to be hard to find a place for the Tesla with that Giant Skeleton bomb.
Yeah, and you see it's had to wait. The Tesla does come out at the last second.
Yep.
The Electro Spirit might be enough. No, the bomb does drop, and Line is way in the lead in game 2.
And that's exactly what you have to do with this deck. You get that Giant Skeleton up front, he goes down, and now your opponent all of a sudden has nowhere to place their building, their response unit, and they just really, really turn on the punishment there. As soon as that Giant Skeleton bomb goes off, you get the balloon down, make sure that there is a big opening, a clear lane to get that drop in.
Goblin Barrel into the front this time. NATO pulls all that together. Line certainly ahead of the game on Morten. This one not just in the actual HP on the towers right now, but reading every play from Morten perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Electro Spirit is going to come in here, does keep the Princess on the board. A nice play by Morten there. Spirit or Goblin Gang in the back to catch the Miner, even though it is on tower. But once again, you know, it's really hard to create space with these Teslas, and that bomb.
Yeah, and you see Morten kind of tilt his head there. When you have one balloon death bomb take out, what was that, 7 troops at once?
Yeah.
It's just a brutal feeling.
Yeah, especially when you're sitting here rocking bait, you know, there's just no way around it. You see the Spirit or the Goblin Gang once again not able to pick up that Miner, and, you know, Line doing it again, making it look really easy against one of the best in the world with bait.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging situation. You know, you put the NATO and the Barb Barrel together, it makes things very, very hard for Morten. Smart call here from Line. We talked about analysis today, and it pays off for Line here in game number 2. We'll be going to a game 3, barring Line disconnecting on his phone here in a couple of seconds, and we'll be seeing a full matchup between these two.
You know, the one thing that I really recognize after watching Morten for so long, playing this deck, and again, the minor connections with Line is just fascinating. Morten is dropping that gang early almost every single time, and Line is going to the one place where they cannot get there to pick up that miner. So just a phenomenal display of recognizing what Morten was doing and making Morten play his game. Morten usually is a guy, when rocking bait, you'll see a lot of dual lane pressure. You'll see a lot of barrels going in both directions. You'll see aggressive princesses. I didn't really see any of that, and it's all because of that Giant Skeleton, Rich.
Well, it's one of those things where you understand why Morten's playing bait here, right? Morten's known as a bait player. He would love to get a big win the championship of the month playing bait. yeah, you do have to question that decision just a little bit with how not strong, with how weak, let's just call it weak, that log bait is classically in the meta right now. There are bait style variations that are stronger, and maybe because he had the extra window with this set to lose, he felt like going for a big moment maybe for his YouTube channel, but might have to regroup here in game number 3.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what he rocks in game number 3. The versatility from Morten has been one of his strongest suits, so going with bait, while it is a lot of fun, it is a bit predictable. He's only run bait twice this weekend, but still, you talk about it in a situation, you can winner takes all, he's got a game to give, he's got a set to give. Bait does feel like the way to go, and it was really easily locked down there by line. You know, I think the biggest thing was when we saw that last replay, it was just that perfect sequencing once again. There was no space. The Princess was low and in the center. The Goblin Gang was off to the left-hand side. There was nowhere to place that Tesla.
So here we go, game number 3. Remember, if Morten wins this game, it is the monthly championship over. If Line wins it, we run this back in a second best of 3.
So do we see a matchup here between the two of these guys that is basically a mirror, but then we see the Night Witch coming out from Morten? Probably not.
Yeah, probably Lava Hound here from Morten with the Night Witch. There could be something else, but, you know, I can't imagine he's running Golem in this situation.
I do like that we have not seen Morten run Night Witch at all this weekend. I love that it's still, you know, a very, very important game here. Not the most important, but we're seeing him run something that we haven't seen him run yet.
And Lion looking like going back to that same graveyard deck we just saw against Air Surfer. So we'll see how well he's able to get into that second level. Of course, Morten wanting to get some damage in early here and not get stuck into a triple elixir situation against Graveyard.
Yeah, luckily for Morten, he has some decent responses to the Graveyard. You know, Night Witch is always a great response. Electro Wizard is always a great response. It's just going to be all about how he ends up using his win condition. And if he can create enough dual lane pressure or opposite lane pressure to where he's not just kind of running into this Graveyard deck over and over, because as you said, in double and in triple, this deck that Line has, it actually has a really substantial amount of DPS and health.
Cannon cart getting across, does go to the Fisherman, and the E-Wiz kind of making that cannon cart look two different directions for a moment, passing the midway point of regulation time. Elixir relatively even. Both towers, both sides pretty much untouched.
You can see Morten just locked in, trying to figure out what code he needs to crack here.
I think he's going to go ahead and eat this Mega Minion swipe, and he does. 2276 on the right-hand side. So oh, this might be Graveyard here.
Mega Knight in the back, Night Witch there as well. I think you could be right. We've got a lot of units on the board that help tank for that, and of course that Night Witch plus the Graveyard working with one another can be very, very frustrating to deal with. So there he is, the first offense from Morten, Fisherman on defense.
And he will hold on to the cannon cart, but he's going to take just maybe one shot on the right-hand side, and Morten does come out with the lead.
Wow.
12-35, and look, one back and an escape as well.
Yeah, that back gets a bite, so does, nope, this last one doesn't, but those arrows from Morten were absolutely perfectly timed on top of those archers, making it so that that was a huge, huge hit, and this is exactly what I was saying early on. How much opposite lane pressure is Morten going to be able to create? All of a sudden, we see this game going only to the left-hand side based off of a great first hit.
Arrows come in, perfect choice here against those archers, and you gotta wonder again, we talked about analysis. We know that Line's run this deck a bunch. He hadn't seen it yet. Looking at the decks that Morten has, he goes, well, I have them with arrows, and we face against this Archer's deck a bunch. Let's go ahead and go with it.
Yeah, and you talk about a $20,000 match right now. Morten rocking something we haven't seen all weekend. That's what you expect from the best in the world. If everything is on the line, what do? You want everything in your favor. You want all the odds stacked in your favor. So let's run the least predictable deck based off of something that I haven't run at all this weekend. Night Witch in again. That's getting tanked for by Skellies.
That Mega Minion gonna get a lot of damage on the right-hand side, though. Night Witch down really late, and this should have been a huge lead for Morten. And you see, again, the tilt of the head. He knows he mistimed that one.
Yeah, that's got to be very, very upsetting, feeling that huge cushion just kind of evaporate.
Fireball in on the right-hand side, and now Line does have the lead.
And Line missed the drop on the Goblin Cage, which is why you see the Mad Face come out. He has to drop the Knight to catch that Bar Barrel. That's a huge misplay by Line, because that's 4 elixir that he needs to turn into offense off of a defense.
everyone's feeling nerves right now, Andrew. This is a huge game for both of these players, and now with 5:54 to 5:39, getting very tight here, and you know that both of them are really hoping they can get it together here.
We get that both low. Now maybe the Mega Knight high. There's the Mega Knight high, but he has to play perfect cleanup down low. Bar Barrel in with the Night Witch and the Brawler with the Snowball. He is able to defend, but can he get on offense, Rich?
I'm not sure. 33 seconds left, 2:52 on the right-hand side. Knight sets the line high, Cannon Cart on defense for Line. Graveyard being defended by a Goblin Cage and a Cannon Cart, and the Archers go way in the back. Arrows come out for the Archers. 3:94 remaining. We are very close, but right now the ball is in Line's court.
Naked Graveyard down low. Snowball on top of the Night Witch. Night Witch is going to have to be met with a Bar Barrel. There's the Bar Barrel. There's the Fireball, and Morton drops the game in the final moments. We are going to a grand finals, my friend.
Just unbelievable. Just absolutely unbelievable. The nerves so high there in game number 3, and both of them with potentially critical errors. It is Line who comes out on top, and we run it back.
How many Mega Minion swipes did Morton allow in that game specifically? You see right there, Cannon Cart gets one shot in, tanks for that Archer, and this was the moment where we saw what felt like Morton just really control the game. You get these arrows in, the graveyards are coming down, Morton's in the lead, and he's in control. But then things changed so quickly, so very quickly for the German.
Yeah, it should be over here, right? They're in pretty good shape, but that Night Witch just maybe a little bit low on Elixir. The Night Witch gets down a half step late, and suddenly, just like that, the entire lead gets swiped away by some Dark Elixir.
Yeah, something that I believe it was Eric, he said yesterday, it's not only thinking about damage on tower and your cycle and the Elixir and what your opponent has on the board, but also when you have that low tower HP, you have no room to do anything other than defend, which is why you would see Line overspending on those offensive pushes. Naked Graveyard plus a Fireball, that doesn't ever really happen unless your opponent is so low. It was Graveyard, Snowball, Fireball on top of nothing, an unsupported Graveyard, and that's how he wins the game.
So now we go to another one of these BO3s, and we saw Morton really kind of take a different direction here in this from his deck selection. We saw Line go a little bit more with what he's been doing so far. I guess the big question here as they run it back, does Line once again go with the decks he's been riding on the entire way through this tournament? Does he switch it up? And does Morton go back to the stuff that got him here?
I mean, they're great questions, and I think the best way to answer it is to think about how these sets actually went, right? Or how these games went in this specific set. And it does feel like that Morton got really lucky with that mortar shot, right? That mortar shot that ended up stealing that game. But then when you talk about this game, it really felt like Morton was the one that was making the smaller mistakes. So I don't really know if Line has to think a lot about the decks that he brought to the table. We can just kind of move through these guys. It's really more about, I think, knowing that you're playing your comfort and expecting Morton to make mistakes again.
I mean, this one is the one that I really have to think he's going to have to question at the end of the day. Win or lose this next best of 3. I understand that Morton's maybe the greatest bait player of all time, certainly up there in the top 3. But playing log bait in this current meta, and especially having not already faced Tornado and a lot of decks that counter log bait pretty well, it just seems like this was a bad choice here in game number 2.
Yeah, you talk about that space that giant skeleton can clean up. It's just too much when the only beefy card Morton has is the Knight. As we hop into game number 3, as we look at both of these decks, you know, it was really a really close game, and honestly it felt like it was Morton's game to lose, and that's basically what he did with that Night Witch coming in really late. He maybe felt a bit too comfortable, so he got so aggressive on offense that Line was able to even the playing field, and then Morton was then playing from behind.
Well, just look at the difference in terms of spend, right? I mean, I want to see, I wish we could see the actual average Elixir, but it looks to me like Line gets around a little bit faster here, and you saw that one moment, Night Witch getting down too late to counter that Mega Minion, and that changed the entire tune.
Yeah, so let's take a look here at the bracket as we're waiting for these two gentlemen to reset their decks, decide what they want to come out with. Yeah. That's right. Morton loses, but he's still in. The first set he's lost this weekend, which is the way it works. Double elimination. Morton worked his way all the way through the championship side of the bracket. And of course, Line worked his way through the elimination side of the bracket. So here we go. Once again, the 15th matchup of this weekend. Morton and Line for 20,000.
And you got to feel like the pressure's all on Morton here. I think Line feels like he's done it. right? I mean, we saw Line make some mistakes there in game number 3. It's not like he was playing with at his absolute 100% best in that moment, but you got to feel like Line feels that there's a huge weight off his shoulders, and Morten feels the pressure beginning to mount.
Yeah, I think if I'm Line, if I have to run the deck that I love to run, which is the Magic Archer NATO Wall Breakers deck, I just think you do it maybe in game 2. You don't do it when everything's on the line in game 3, and you don't do it to open up with. That's maybe the best way to keep your opponent guessing. I honestly would just love to see him just bench it for the rest of the day. But if it's your best deck, or if it's the deck you've had so much success with this weekend, it's hard to walk away from it.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult for him to get through that. And again, he's already won the first of those. He was in the lower bracket, was in the elimination bracket. Now both he and Morten have given up their free life. You have to take one set loss to go home. They have no more set losses to give, no more match losses to give. This is it. This is the grand final, and the winner, this is now, Andrew, last one you could have called it, but this one really is a best of 3 for $10,000. Winner takes $20K, loser takes $10,000, and man, if they were feeling pressure in the last one, it's got to be higher here.
Yeah, and I think the thing that these guys have to remember is they each have a set in hand against each other, right? It's happened earlier for Morten, just happened for Line. We're 1-1. We're 0-0. We're resetting, and as you said, it's a huge reset for $10,000 or $20,000. So remember the game you play. Remember the sets that you won. Remember the mistakes that your opponents made, and remember the advantages that you really took and ran with. And I think you just reset, come back into this set, and just play the game that you know and love. Morten, I was talking about it when he was on camera there in that last set. It was getting to him. He was too much in his own head. And I think that's why we saw some of those small mental mistakes out of him late in the game.
Well, the thing that I've said a lot about these dual modes is I love dual mode conceptually, but you miss best of 5, right? The ability to really flush it out. So I've said for a long time that I think for dual mode, a BO303, it's 3 sets of best of 3, and that's what we're getting here from these two, actually.
Yeah.
Morten won the first one, Line won the second one, so here we get that third set, the best of 9, or the BO303, if you want to call it that, and I think that's fitting for this monthly final.
So technically, our predictions are still on the table, I think, and I got some points, but those points technically mean nothing if they end up losing this one. So I'm still sticking with my prediction of Line. Are you still going with Morten? Has your heart changed in the last few minutes?
Man, you're putting me in the hot one here because I just, you know what? Here's the thing. I can't, in good conscience, publicly vote against him.
Yeah.
Right? Like I feel like I have to back him here. One of us has to. And it's a question of what does he walk in the door with right now? I'm not talking about decks. I'm not talking about gameplay. I'm talking about mentality. What does he walk in the door with in this moment? We've seen him play through bad matchups. We've seen him play through good matchups. If he comes in focused, he comes in kind of getting rid of those mistakes from last game, he has it. But it's just, we saw that how much does that Mega Minion keep swiping in his mind as we go into this super grand final?
Yeah, and what does it mean to the mind games of Line, recognizing that, his best moments probably came from small mistakes from Morten. But that's the way it goes, right? That's what you have to do at this level. That's why I think Josh said what he said yesterday, was just that you have to give your opponent more opportunities to make mistakes. And that's exactly what Line did. He made Morten make mistakes. And you talk about that mental game, Rich. You said you think it's in Line's favor. I think I agree with you. I do, because I think, he had that really rough set against Morten, and since then he's just been lights out, right? And one of those sets was against the guy that took him out. So I'm thinking that Line here, just stay away from that deck. Just please stay away from that deck in game number 1. Please don't play super predictable. Maybe go to a deck that you won with, that you only played once this weekend to start off with. And then, like you said, for Morten, the guy can push number 1 on stream. Like, the guy eats and breathes pressure. Now he just needs to come out of the end with the gold when all that pressure's on.
Well, I think the big thing for this one's going to come down to game number 1. Right? I think that if Morten plays clean in game number 1 and doesn't get some insanely terrible matchup in game number 1, I'm not worried about game number 2 and 3 from his side of things.
Right.
But if he loses game 1 on a mistake, or loses game 1 on a really just brutally bad matchup, that's where I think those demons might start to rise. So if I'm Line in this situation, I'm throwing my whole deck pool out of the window right here, and I'm going, how do I try to 100-0 Morten in matchup here in game number 1? How do I make him feel like he is in an unwinnable situation and let that begin to pile on him mentally?
Yeah, and you know, on the other side of it, since Line is a guy that rocks, you know, he's a very controlled and calculated player. It's very rare that you see Line go swinging for the fences, right? It's usually a push that's kind of come together and he capitalizes on it. That being said, I'd love to see Morten play a very defensive, maybe minor chip, minor control deck. Morten's very good at controlling the game, and when he slows himself down, it seems like the other opponents or any opponent has a lot more trouble hanging with Morten when they're playing his game. Like I was saying in that log bait matchup, usually Morten's a guy that goes to both towers, but he was playing Line's game there. So here we go, man. Grand finals.
Grand final indeed. To champions in their own right. Morten, the Clash Royale League Western champion, Line, the No-Tilt World champion, here for our monthly championship. There's no more lives to give, no more outs. This is it. Best of 3, winner takes the crown.
Looking like we could be seeing Hog EQ again from Line. This is what we've seen with these 3 cards drop before out of him. Morten most likely going to the skies. No surprise there. There's the Hog Rider out of Line.
And the cage meets the Hog Rider there at the bridge, and that brawler should get its punches all the way in. And those of you who don't know, some people still play Goblin Cage in the middle early against a Hog Rider. That placement that Morten did, you just saw there, will completely counter a Hog Rider if it's not supported.
Yep, you just got to be fast, guys. You got to be fast.
Flying Machine gets coverage from the guards, and Mortar goes to the left-hand lane. So one thing to keep in mind is that in this construction, Line is probably running Zap.
Inferno Dragon dropped right on top of that mortar that was locked on the guards. Nice sizzle there. Hog Rider out to turn that Inferno around, but Inferno will still lock on that top tower for some good sizzle.
Yeah, Line decides not to touch it there, and that's about a 4,000, 5,000 HP change right there, but does get his shots on the bottom. But we are still pretty close. Look at that. Baby Dragon gets on tower, and Morten takes the lead.
Yeah, Line, you know, was thinking that Hog Rider would maybe pull that Inferno away, but the Inferno decides to just turn, go towards the tower. 1471 remaining, and now we find Morten in a very, very good spot. Musketeer out of cycle, Bats now out of cycle because Line's trying to create pressure on the opposite side of the board. Morten maybe just arrows that and leaves it alone. No, he goes Goblin Cage because we're getting into double.
But he's not going to pull some of those bats, right? Look at those bats shredding that right-hand tower. He's trying to set up here, maybe go for a big-time push, get some support on that left-hand side. But again, the little aerial troops getting away from Morten and helping Line out a ton. Yeah, Line there looking for the Miner early on. Morten plays the Baby Dragon first and then the Miner, so the Miner's actually able to get on top of that Musketeer. Now the arrows help take it off the board, but Line really helping clean things up and even things up by that great hit on the right-hand side. And Mortar not going to get picked up here on the right-hand side as well. So that's going to be a couple of mortar shots to that right-hand tower. And just like that, the lead swings back one more time, 12-23 to 13-78, as we are just 15 seconds away from sudden death. And I'm curious to see how much Line turns up the heat. And yes, he does. There it is. Valkyrie plus Hog plus Goblins. The whole point of this is he's got to create so much pressure so that he cannot allow his opponent to support that Lava Hound. And that Hog Rider is very healthy and on tower. Doesn't get the hit in, though. Does get 521, and now the Miner with the, look at the support on the left-hand side here with the Lava Pups behind the Miner. And just like that, the Zap does have to come out. It's a ton of damage in both lanes, and Morten nearly evens things up. Just a brilliant amount of pressure from the German here on the right-hand side. There's the high Gob Cage. Mortar is off the board, and this is nothing but trouble for Line. Now we get a high Musketeer and a meet with the high Flying Machine. This is very, very difficult if that Musketeer goes off the board. Morten goes under with the Hogs. The guards, do they stop the Hog in time? They do. The swing was in the air, doesn't connect. 521 to 589 still. Pressure in both lanes right now for the German. And that sliver HP Musketeer was able to stay on the board and get that damage in on the Inferno and the Baby Dragon. Now we see the Miner come out, but now has to be a Goblin Cage as well because that Miner gets within range. Inferno, Rich. And this, and look at that. You see the guards have to come out here to help with both the Mortar and that Hog Rider, and no shot. And we've been kind of a stalemate here for the last few seconds. Here we go, triple elixir, and Miner gets on the tower on the right-hand side. And there's the high Gob Cage once again. Going to catch that, take it off the board. Mortar has to meet the guards. Damage still getting in on that right-hand side, but now nothing to tank for the Mortar. It's off the board. Zap trying to control here at the bridge. Miner goes to the back, right into the spears. But Flying Machine gets on tower, and there you go. Morten takes game number 1.
Morten doing such an incredible job of dual lane pressure. It looked like it was all left all day. He finally gets a great defense on the right, maybe overspends just a little bit, takes more damage than he would like, but then he starts controlling both sides of the board, and that's when it became incredibly difficult for Line.
Those hog defenses become challenging, right? You mentioned that Goblin Cage at the top. Goblin Cage on its own can counter a Hog Rider on its own. But when you start pouring stuff on that side, and you saw him pour it on over and over again, that Hog Rider sneaks on through, and Line got very, very close here.
And it was right here. You get that switch up of the way that he was dropping units. Morten decides to go with a high Baby Dragon to protect, I believe it was the Flying Machine, and then the Miner to the left-hand side. That made it so that that push on the right-hand side that would have been maybe a little bit easier to defend, he had to spend all of his attention on both lanes, and obviously that's an impossible thing to do. So Morten, seeing an opening, he goes for it and controls the rest of that game.
So for the 3rd time today, Morten has a championship point. He had 2 of them in the last match. His first one here. Can he close things out against Line?
I mean, I love what we saw out of him in both sets here with Line going with something a little bit different in game number 1. Now, I think it goes without saying, Rich, I don't think either of us actually want to see him play bait right now.
No, definitely not bait. I mean, look, there are a lot of different other variations with Goblin Barrel he can go to, but, you know, I almost want to see Morten just take the Goblin Barrel, put it on the shelf, and find something else. Maybe go with Royal Hogs, a thing that we haven't seen him run much lately, but that was his go-to for so many years.
Well, one thing I've kind of recognized between these games with Morten and Line is that when Morten is kind of just beating his head into Line, and they're playing a 1-lane game, it does seem like Line is ending up coming on top. I want to see Morten run something fast that is either dual lane pressure like a fast cycle deck, or, I mean, at this point it's too late, I would have loved to see him run something like a split lane soul like fireball bait deck.
So Goblin Cage Mega Minion out for Line in this one. Snowball cycle just for a little bit of extra work, and looking like, well, back to graveyard again for Line, so I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is the same matchup that we saw in the last one.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun rematch here. Low cannon cart meets high cannon cart on the right-hand side. That Archer not going to have to be worried about.
So what does Morten do differently this time around, right? Last time, the Snowballs just abused his Spear Goblins, and Line did a great job of getting Valkyrie out of cycle, and it felt like Morten just could not play in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that Morten has to do is slow down just a bit here. Maybe not try to make as many things happen as he did the first time, but it's really tough, right? I mean, it's still Morten we're talking about. It's not like he's making dumb plays, and you can see him already shaking his head. Maybe just really not happy to see this matchup again, Rich.
No, it feels like a rough one, right? It feels like he has to overspend in order to beat those archers, and that Line has an easy way to beat the spears. So Morten now has to figure out some way to make sure the Valkyrie is there on those graveyard defenses, but I don't know if he can.
Yeah, and Line just kind of being a master of cycle. Once he's able to get cheap cards in his hand and he knows what his cycle exactly is, he's usually able to get around very, very quickly, and he's a guy that loves to move his cycle around wholly.
So good fireball value here for Morten on the right-hand side at the bridge. First 2 minutes away, no serious damage either direction.
Look, these guys playing real calm, and yeah, man, I really don't know. I don't know the answer to how Morten's going to be able to clean up those graveyards better than he did last time.
So cycles Musketeer to the right-hand side, Cannon Cart onto the Mortar. And you see he's going to be ready for a graveyard push on the left-hand side. Has to control everything high, and here you go. So Cannon Cart comes in to control against the Brawler, and will the late Valkyrie come in? No, goes with Snowball here instead.
I mean, that was perfect, right? That was a perfect defense, or about as good as it can get, and he still took a little bit of damage, and he had to do all of those sequences, like, basically pristine. I don't know how many times you can do that, especially once the elixir starts flowing faster and faster, and when Line is looking for you to repeat defenses.
And trying to find some way to get Mortar on tower is Morten, and that's one thing he didn't get a ton of the last time these two decks faced each other. So, and here we go, just a pressure, but that's an easy kite for the Ice Golem.
There you go. Cannon Cart going to meet it. Now Morten's got 2 tanks in front of his cannon here. Or Mortar.
And here we go. This is the best offensive sequence that we've seen Morten put together now in 2 games with this matchup. We'll see if it pays off. Fireball in on the Brawler. not going to get a ton of damage.
Yeah, I mean, he gets basically nothing out of it. You know, doesn't get the splash damage because the cannon cart's placed perfectly from the mortar. He was able to put together a crazy offense. You see him shaking his head. He's like, what else can I do? I literally dropped a Valkyrie naked in the other lane to get kited to the lane that I wanted, to get 2 tanks in front of my mortar, and I got nothing out of it.
Well, it's one of those things where, again, you know, you look at the 2 ways he's going to put. There's 2.5 win conditions in this deck, right? You have the Graveyard, you have the Mortar, you have the Cannon Cart. Cannon Cart's not getting on tower. Graveyard, you have to overspend to get past those archers. And then, of course, the Mortar, with so many easily cycled ground troops to pick it up, getting that on tower would require either the most brilliant play Morton's made all weekend or a major mistake from his opponent.
And with the beefiness of Line's deck, those spells that Morton has, he can't cycle them. The moment he cycles his Fireball anywhere other than at the river when Line overspends on stacking troops, he loses. He's always got to have that Fireball available just in case Line goes, all right, let's go, you know, Ice Golem, Mega Minion, plus Cannon Cart at the bridge.
And you see, look at just how much damage that Line got in this one, and now Morton trying to go just all out here. Has the Cannon Cart down, Valkyrie in front of the Cannon Cart, ignoring the damage, Graveyard in. Can he do anything here?
Fireball on top of those archers, Valkyrie no longer on the board, so no tank there. Really, really tough stuff, and now we're probably going to have to see Morton use that high spell. No, those guys are pretty low. He's probably going to clean this up with maybe a Musketeer. He goes heavy in the right-hand lane, but still, just so much to tank, man.
Yeah, well, he knows he has to get past that Cannon Cart and doesn't have any good way to do it here. Fireball in on the archers, Snowball in behind. King Tower does get activated, but skeletons, can they do it? Can one skeleton hit? No, cannot. Oh, he had 1329 early. I was completely on the left-hand side. Line takes game number 2, and now we have a best of 1, a single game for the championship.
A $20,000 game of Clash Royale, and it does seem that the mental gymnastics keep leaning in favor of Line. Morton very frustrated with himself in that game, and I think it was strictly just because he did everything he could possibly do and was just not able to get on tower. And what I love about Line in this game was something that Eric had mentioned yesterday. If you know, and it's something that you and I have said for years, if it's not broke, you know, don't fix it. And that's what Line did this game. He was able to continue doing the same thing over and over confidently without ever making any stretches, any reaches that gave Morton an opening.
Yeah, and you see that Brawler on the right-hand side, the one that he was ignoring in order to get the damage on the left-hand tower. That Brawler ended up being the one that put the game out of reach. So here we go, game number 3. And man, you know, you're sitting there, you have 2 options for your deck for game number 4. And I mean, how many do you think they have it locked in? Or are they just going deck 3, deck 4, deck 3, deck 4?
Oh my gosh.
Deck 3.
I right? Like at this point, what do you play? What do you, I mean, the other guy's got 2 decks, you've got 2 decks. Maybe the matchup is great, maybe it's not. Maybe you just go for the one deck that you have of the 2 remaining that is the least matchup dependent, right? It's the one that has the least favorable matchups or disfavorable matchups, right? No 80-20s, no 90-10s. We're talking 60-40 at best. And I think that's what you want to come out with when you're as good as these 2 guys are.
Yeah, you know, that's the thought, right? You don't want to flip the coin here. You want to give yourself the best chance. But then also you're sitting there going, okay, well, what do I think their
exactly
what is their good, like, no bad matchup deck, and do I have a counter for that one?
And here we go with Line rocking wall breakers early on with the log there. Is he going back to what I hoped he would have ran in game 2? Is he going back to his tried and true here in game 3?
Knight does pick up the miner on the right-hand side.
If Morton ran... Okay, all right, here we go.
Yeah, you're about to say Expo, but it's Hoggy King.
I was going to say Expo just because I think it would have matched up so well against what we have seen out of Line so many times. But here we go. Hog going to struggle with that NATO.
Yeah, Expo with that Magic Archer deck, you know, I have never played at the highest level, obviously. This Magic Archer NATO deck, I don't typically find 2.9 or 3.0 to be the most brutal of matchup, but also I'm not playing against the same level of players as these guys are.
Right. So Morton starting that Earthquake cycle early on King Tower and Princess. I'm pretty sure he's not happy about the situation he's in, but I'm a little surprised that he's surprised by the situation he's in as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. You kind of had to think that this is what you're going to be facing. And against NATO, against Bomb Tower, man, that's going to be an interesting call here for Morton on how he tries to get through.
Yeah, and you see the stacking here of these units. He has to save the log, so the delivery is going to be really, really nice to have. And there we go. High Hog Rider to make sure that Magic Archer doesn't connect, because we all know how Line is deadly accurate with those Magic Archers.
Here's the interesting thing, though, is that this does not have to be a bad situation for Morten, right? It's not the Hog Riders. At some point, the Hog Riders are mostly going to be about trying to force out the NATOs so the line can't use them offensively, and trying to force out bomb towers so the elixir gets spent. In the end, if he can defend well enough here for the first 4 minutes, that triple elixir, you have EQ and log. Your opponent has NATO and log. Right? So that spell cycle at the end can really go in Morten's favor. Yeah, it's a good point you make there. And right now, Morten doing a good job of turning up the heat in both lanes, getting good damage in on tower, and also recognizing what his opponent is playing, right? He gets the Knight up high to catch the Spear Goblins, the Skeletons down low to catch the Miner. It's all about sequencing these defenses correctly, and he's continuing to do it over and over. 1760 to 1851. Hog Rider in. Bomb Tower this time does come out in response. Log being used to try to help the Hog Rider get on tower here, as the Skeletons are sufficient for that defense against the Wall Breakers. And Knight up high again to catch those Spear Goblins. Really good job of using the Knight there and always double dropping, making sure that Magic Archer doesn't line up. But the Magic Archer does line up. 1235. Morten not happy about that. Yeah, that Knight just, if he plays that, that's a hard one, right? Because if Line plays the Magic Archer to the outside, then you want to play the Knight to the outside, or to the others to the inside. And if he goes inside, you want to play outside just to prevent that lineup. But that one just made the nice little easy crosshairs come together. Yeah, and a bit of a surprising push there on the left-hand side. I wonder if Line forgot about the delivery in hand of Morten. He sends 5 elixir into an easy 3 cleanup, but does still get a little bit more damage down on that bottom right-hand side. Line playing a great game right now, and going back to the well one more time and trying to get that lineup. This NATO here, defensive, not offensive. EQ gets some damage, and the Magic Archer still gets a shot. Wow. Yeah, that was so aggressive from Line, but it was also an incredibly calculated play. The fact that he gets a shot in there is shocking. The Hog Rider comes out, which means that they've got to get the log in on those Wall Breakers. Here we go. Final minute, 10 seconds. 6:59 to 7:67. This is the last game. This is the championship point, and we are so close. $20,000 on the line. Magic Archer plus Knight at the bridge. We see a Knight go to the inside. Magic Archer cleaned up off the board. Nice stuff from Morten, but still damage is done. Wall Breakers run right into some troops. Cannot get on tower. Log one direction. Miner. Does Morten pick up the Miner this time? No. Archers go to the back. NATO making a lot of room here. 203. Log will take that right-hand tower down to 275. Oh my word. Does the Hog get a shot? No, the Bomb Tower picks it up. Bomb Tower is in. Hog is still alive. 101. Log is in. Nothing is there. Nothing is there to catch the Miner. There's the NATO. Morten loses by 29 HP. Oh my God. Magic Archer again for Morten in a championship game, and just ends up being the absolute nightmare, the demon he can't get away from. 29 HP. Line is your March champion. Line takes the 20 grand in a bounce back set against the guy that sent him to the elimination bracket early on. He even misses a NATO there, and he has to overspend. Morten, with the shake of the head early on, recognizes this is not a good matchup, and that is where you gotta wonder, how did Morten not expect it? He played a very good game given the circumstance here. And they showed earlier that Knight walking across the Magic Archer's path, and that's the hard part with Magic Archer. And here we go, taking a look at this very end, 101 to 203, and look at this NATO that's about to come in, or the NATO was beforehand. The NATO beforehand, this second NATO to finish it off, it was the NATO before when the Archers went for the split on the behind the tower, that you see Line predict with the NATO, pull the Archers to the inside, and get that damage from the Miner. Beautiful, beautiful gameplay by Line to finish this one out. Morten only loses 2 sets all weekend long. I mean, I guess everyone only loses 2 sets all weekend long, but they're back-to-back in the finals. Line is able to put this together with an immaculate run. Once he was sent down into the lower bracket, he was just so clean, so dialed, and honestly, there was only one moment, I think, all weekend where we were like, what happened to Line? And that was in his first set against Morten. Yeah, that missed NATO, but who cares about the missed NATO? We called it at the time I called it a $4,000 NATO. Well, I'll eat my words here. $20,000 victory, first place for Line. And I haven't seen the standings yet, but I'm fairly certain that when we look at these end-of-day standings, that he is going to be the number one on the leaderboard for World Finals.
I mean, he beat Air Surfer twice. He beat Morton twice. What more do you want? He beat Hazard twice, I believe. Is that right? No, just the one time. But still, you look at this incredible lineup that we had this weekend and the amount of talent that Line had to get through and the amount of times he had to do it. It's just insane.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. Just absolutely nuts. And he did it going back to the same well over and over again, right? Some players were trying to vary up their deck pool consistently, and Line was just, no, I know these ones. I know how to play these ones perfectly. I can outplay in bad situations. And that Magic Archer, that Minor Wallbreaker Magic Archer NATO deck just did wonders for him throughout the weekend.
Yeah, so let's take a look at those standings that you were just talking about, those global standings. Line had to have had an incredible performance when you look at these leaderboard points that were available, right? He gets that first place spot, 100 more points. Morton has to be really, really high up there, but it's just crazy to think what Line was able to do and how many games that he had to play this weekend. And, you know, Rich, that honestly might be one of my biggest takeaways is what you're saying right there, is the fact that Line just went back to what worked over and over and over. You and I even expected that deck to come out. If there was only one more opportunity, it felt like that's the deck he had to go to. But if you're that good with it, it doesn't matter.
Well, we mentioned you were talking about going for your outplay deck in that game number 3, right? The one that doesn't have all the bad matchups.
Yeah.
And Morton going for his cycle deck and Line going for his cycle deck. And you said, how do you not see Line playing that deck in that moment? And I'm wondering what Morton's other option was, right? Were they both rough options in that matchup? Was it specifically, was the other one, was that big nod of his head going, oh, I should have taken the other one? And we can only know if Morton will let us in on that secret.
Yeah, maybe he was waiting for Line, or excuse me, hoping for Line to play that deck maybe earlier on in the set that would have matched up better with one of his other decks, then having Hog EQ available for the third one against whatever Line would have had. But like you said, which I think is a really solid point, is that maybe both the decks he had matched up poorly against that. And he just hoped that it wasn't going to be that. He saw the cards come out. You saw his immediate reaction. And basically, it's history from there. I mean, it doesn't do service to the great game that Morton played, but it started off bad for him and it ended bad for him.
Well, you look at the things that Line did, right? And one of the benefits of leaning against a deck, right? You talk about guys who just grind the same deck for a ladder finish, for example, is knowing all the different interactions that you want, right? So supporting some of the high number 1 spot miner, the outside top corner spot miner with a log, knowing skeletons are coming in. On that one big play, the miner to the outside corner, knowing archers were the way to catch, NATOing those archers to the inside. Line was just a step ahead, especially once he had the cycle of Morton down red and cold.
So what's really interesting, too, is the conversation about cycle players, especially wall breaker cycle players, being our first 2 champions, right? You look at Mo and you look at Line and you look at the decks that they ran a lot this weekend. And, you know, historically for Mo, these controlled decks, we had a long conversation with Josh and Eric yesterday before broadcast about how they are kind of broken right now. And I pushed back a little bit saying, like, yeah, they're broken, but if you make a mistake with a control deck, then you lose. But if you don't make mistakes, or if you make only one, as Line did all weekend long, you know, maybe it just doesn't matter. Maybe they are just that broken when you're this good.
Well, yeah, you're talking about the level of play where you do make few mistakes. And also, you know, there's a question of if you're playing some heavy beatdown deck, a mistake might be a 5, 6, 7 elixir mistake, whereas this might be a 1, 2, 3 elixir mistake. Right? So the recovery ability is one of those things to think about in those situations as well. And obviously, Line, talk about recovery ability. That missed NATO early on in the first matchup against Morton, the mental recovery that he made here. Remember, he lost the first matchup against Morton and then came from behind down 1 in both the final and the Super Grand Final. So that shows the mentality of Line here, who has now won essentially 2 world tournaments, the No-Tilt World Championship and this March final.
Yeah, and you look even in that last game with Morton, he did make the mistake of missing a NATO again, right? Like he pulled that hog and it still got on Princess Tower, but he immediately was like, you know what? No, not twice in one day. If I'm going to miss the NATO, fine. I'm going to overspend on defense and then I'll recover later on. As you said, that's only a 3 elixir mistake plus the log, it adds up to 5. Sometimes mistakes are 5, 6, 7 elixir, which I think was really cool when you were talking about that is if if you make a 7 elixir mistake, some people can play 4 cards and make the same mistake, right? And it costs the exact same at the end of the day. And that's what we saw there from Lion. So now I believe our leaderboards are ready. So let's take a look at them. How to add up all of those points that Lion had just earned. There's a lot of them to talk about.
Yeah, let's take a look here, and we'll see if Lion is on top. And he does just barely surpass Mini Minter by 25 points. No, sorry, by 15 points. Lion is now your overall leader. Mini Minter in number 2. Mohamed Light, despite just barely not qualifying for this weekend, still in the 3rd spot. Igor, a.k.a. Hazard, and Morton rounding out 4 and 5.
Yeah, very, very close there at the top. Lion being one of our only competitors to make it 2 months in a row, him and Mini. But obviously, Mini has struggled a little bit here in these playoffs, or I mean, I guess in these finals, I should say. I'm not really worried about his performance. I'm not really worried at all about King Mini Minter. You know, getting first place in the seeding tournament twice in 2 months is something to be really proud of. And he's still in 2nd place overall on the leaderboard. So the work that these guys are putting in right now makes it so that they could most likely be at those world finals, just like you, just like me and Rich. But Rich and I definitely can't be there for playing. You know, Josh and Eric, maybe they could, but literally anyone in the world can compete in CRL. That's right. Open up your game, play some ladder. The hard part is finishing in the top 1,000, then in the top 32, and then in the top 8, and then making it to worlds. But, you know.
Yeah. Well, you see 2 different routes, right, to making that leaderboard. On one side, you have qualifying the top 1,000 and then destroying in the tournament. On the other side, look at the players who haven't been in the top 8 yet, but are still in the top leaderboard. Anaban's on there. Pompeo's on there. Furkan's on there. I think I saw Framcito on there. You see so many guys. I don't know if that's Fram or if Fram and Framcito are the same person. If they're wrong, excuse me on that one. But you see so many players who haven't yet been in this top 8 who are there because of high ladder performances. So you really kind of have 2 paths to the World Finals. Murder ladder or qualify and kill it in these tournaments.
That's a really, really good point that you make. It is crazy to think that any of those guys that haven't even been here once could take first place next month by just having a great qualifier and a great finals weekend. So, you know, my final thoughts, congratulations to you, Line. Morton, you know, close but no cigar once again, but it's not World Finals, which is what I know he cares about the most. Probably sucks to lose that 10 grand, but a big time congratulations to all of our people winning money today, all of our incredible competitors, and of course, Line, big time salute to you, man. That's an incredible first place.
Yeah, I mean, really great performance. 2 phenomenal back-to-back performances. We'll see, can either he or Mini Minter make it 3 in a row back here next month? And if you want to make sure you don't miss that, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the Clash Royale League action. And of course, get ready. You have 2 weeks left for your push to hit that top 1,000 ladder. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. It's been another phenomenal monthly final for everyone here at CRL. For Eric Benamu, for Crap, for my brother there, Andrew Guy, I'm Rich Slayton. This is Clash Royale League. We will see you back here next month.